Good morning, everybody. So here we are at the trial of Jennifer Crumbley, the trial that never should have happened, the trial that feels like an affront to mankind and American justice, right here, brought to you live with trial coverage provided by yours truly. Now, just to keep you all serene, keep you all calm. I know I'm late. Trial still has not started yet. Still has not started. I don't believe it's going to start for another 15 minutes at least. I think we have some time. I think we can settle in. I wanted to give you some contextual backgrounds, some understanding. Now, Jennifer is charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. So I want to take a moment to look at Supreme Court's decision whereby they allowed this case to proceed because they moved to dismiss based on the fact that, well, no one's ever been charged with involuntary manslaughter for being the parent of a school shooter before, and look through what the court said they're going to be looking for, what the DA could potentially establish, which would justify a conviction in this case, because this way, as we watch the trial, we have a better idea overall as to what the objective of the DA is and what the objective of the defense is to try and refute. Now, I'm not the one who wrote the rules on these standards. I personally do not agree with these standards. I think these standards are too lax. I think these standards are too easily misconstrued. But we are going to discuss the standards that Michigan has decided that the state must establish. Now, first and foremost, again, trial has not yet started. When it starts, I'm going to jump right in there right away. I've got a camera on the trial right now, so we're all going to be good to go the moment they all rise or thereabouts. Right now, the judge is not even in the courtroom. In fact, here's a little picture of what's going on in there. There's your courtroom live. The judge isn't even there yet. All right. What I wanted to pull up was the decision of the court. You'll see that. And the key issue here is proximate cause. Now, what is proximate cause? What is proximate cause in the words of the court? The court talks about 2 different types of causation. There's actual causation and then proximate cause. So causation is, of course, an elementary of involuntary manslaughter. However, the concept of proximate causation is obscure. This is what they want to claim. This is what Michigan believes, how Michigan has laid down the law. And they have 2 parts to it: factual causation and proximate causation. Factual causation exists if the finder of fact determines that but for the defendant's conduct, the result would not have occurred. That's factual causation, a but for, meaning if you were out of the mix, this never would have happened. That's actual causation. The existence of factual causation alone, however, will not support the imposition of criminal liability. By the way, I think you can make a fair argument that if the parents were out of the mix altogether, he still does this crime. He still commits this crime. If he had been left in foster care or left elsewhere. But I guess they're going to say that the parents supplied the gun, which is part of the logic behind this whole thing. Proximate causation must also be established. Concerns arise regarding whether the defendant's conduct was the proximate or legal cause of the decedent's death. When the death is so remote from the defendant's conduct that it would be unjust to permit conviction. So the question is whether it is too removed, whatever actions you took that are part of this but for, those actions are too removed from the actual cause of the death. In other words, proximate causation is a legal construct designed to prevent criminal liability from attaching when the result of the defendant's conduct is viewed as too remote or unnatural. Importantly, under criminal law, there can be more than one cause of harm, and defense acts need only be contributory cause that was a substantial factor. So this is one of the things we're going to focus in here. It needs to be the actions of Jennifer Crumbley. In order for it to be convicted, they're going to have to, the state will have to prove it's a substantial factor in producing the harm. Now, the harm, understand, is this. The harm is these people, these kids are dead. So her actions are a substantial factor in their death. As the court quotes, in assessing criminal liability for some harm, it is not necessary that the party convicted of a crime be the sole cause of harm, only that it be a contributory cause that was a substantial factor in producing the harm. The criminal law does not require that there be but one proximate cause of harm found. Quite the contrary. All acts that proximately cause the harm are recognized by law. So, this is part of the reason that you sort of look at this whole thing and you say, she sent a text message about a horse. It's hard to understand how this ends up leading to kids dying. Now, I don't want to oversimplify for the purposes of making the case, the state's case, sound weaker than it is. You can understand situations where gross neglect, in theory, I guess, if you want to take this and apply it to a case where I could say, all right, there I understand it. If the parents teach a kid that when you're upset, the best way to respond is to lash out and commit violence against other kids. And they taught this, and they teach that to a kid a year before the kid does his shooting. You can understand how that would have a foreseeable impact. That's very different from gross neglect that the kid feels alone. That's very different from interpreting giving your kid a gun as gross neglect. As someone pointed out in the comments to me yesterday, I thought someone made a fair. I don't remember the tweeter's name. It's last night before I went to bed, I saw someone commenting and saying, "Hey, you're always the one saying that this is a product of the parents," which is not true. I don't always say that. So why are you so reluctant to attach liability here to these parents? I don't always say that, but I do agree that a lot of the crap that we see visited by individuals are reflections of the breeding by the parents. I'm not going to shy away from that position because it's truth. But I think there's a big distinction between recognizing that wrong and then attaching criminal liability to it because of this issue of proximate cause, that you have to show that there's that this is something that's foreseeable, that this is like a likely outcome. And to me, the likeliness of the outcome, not just that this could be something that comes out of it, but something that you pretty much should expect that's going to happen, must be the yardstick. It must be the yardstick. If they had hypnotized the kid saying, hey, killing your classmates is cool, you can understand this liability is going to attach there. But anyway, let's move forward here. For a defendant's conduct to be regarded as proximate cause, the victim's injury must be a direct and natural result of the defendant's actions. And this is what I'm saying. Neglect of a kid, to say that that's a direct and natural result of the defendant's actions. Which, by the way, this is not a direct and natural result of the defendant. I guess, yeah, that it's a direct and natural result that the parents neglected Ethan. That's why Ethan goes and shoots up a school, assuming you believe they neglected him. Sometimes, as in this case, where there may be one or more potential cause of harm to a victim, it is necessary to examine whether there was an intervening cause that superseded the defendant's conduct, such that the causal link between defendant's conduct and defendant's injury is broken. Now, let's make sure that we're all on the same page in understanding who they're referring to here when they talk about defendant and victim. Because over here, what they're basically doing is it's Jennifer Crumbley who's the defendant and these dead kids in school who are the victims. So you want to see their actions. Jennifer Crumbley's individual actions led to these kids dying. That's what the state needs to establish. When you look at it from that perspective, this seems to say that she's the cause of these kids dying. You can start to understand why a lot of attorneys have a difficult time accepting this and why it is that this is a first of its kind in American jurisprudence, why this has never happened before. Because that's what the state is charging. By definition, when they charge her as defendant, they're saying, because of your actions, Jennifer, these children are dead. And normally we talk about something called an intervening cause. What's an intervening cause? Well, an intervening cause is when something happens that is beyond the defendant's control. And that will take away the foreseeability. When someone is acting in a way that's not really predictable, that's an interceding or intervening cause, which we say that breaks this link, this proximate cause link, and you cannot attach liability to the defendant. And normally we say the misconduct of a third party, and in this case, Ethan himself is the third party. Did Jennifer kill these kids? Ethan is the one who did it. Ethan is the one who's the intervening third party. And since he has a mind of his own, he has willpower of his own, decision-making ability of his own, unlike, let's say, someone who's mentally incapacitated, right? Someone who is mentally challenged, or a 4-year-old. In those cases, you can say it's much less of an intervening factor when that individual acts, because they don't really have much of a willpower. They don't really have much decision-making thought process that's happening there. So whatever you seed into their head is likely going to basically be, you're like a puppet master of a puppet in that case. But when you have an individual who's a young adult, a young thinker, who's capable of forming their own thoughts, usually we say that that's going to be an interceding factor. If the finder of fact determines that an intervening cause supersedes a defendant's conduct, such that the causal link between the defendant's conduct, meaning Jennifer Crumbley's conduct, and the victim's injury was broken, proximate cause is lacking and criminal liability cannot be imposed. Whether an intervening cause supersedes defendant's conduct is a question of reasonable foreseeability. And if you question whether or not, and here's the reason a lot of people thought this case should be dismissed. If you don't think that it's reasonably foreseeable, if you think that him shooting up these kids was reasonably foreseeable, you need to understand the timeline of events. The morning of November 30th, Ethan drew what was deemed to be a disturbing picture of violence. And we're gonna see this picture over the course of the trial. In fact, it might even be here. I think it might actually be above here. There it is. Here's the picture. See? So there's this gunman or whatever that he drew that morning. When he drew this picture, that I don't think they were crossed out. I think it was like this. There you go. It looks like someone being shot up, and he wrote, "The thoughts won't stop. Help me. Blood everywhere. A bullet. The world is dead. My life is useless." And the complaint against them is that they failed to apprise him of the fact that he might have a gun. Okay. If everyone at the time that they saw this, when the school saw this, and I'm sure we're going to see testimony about this, they thought he was a danger to himself. And you can understand why, looking at these pictures, you can understand why it is that, whoa, slow down, easy. You can understand why when they look at this, they think to themselves, is he drawing himself here? The thoughts won't stop. Help me. My life is useless. The world. These are all blood everywhere. You can understand why they interpret this as a risk to himself, not a risk to others, which is part of the reason they left him in school. Despite the fact that he drew this at 8:59 in the morning, parents come down there. They seem to be a risk to himself, not to others. So they felt like him being in school is likely a safer option than sending him home, where he would be by himself. Now, with all of that in mind, so now this is a conversation that the school has the morning of, after this picture is drawn, with the parents as to what's the best thing to do right now. And that's what the conclusion that they reached at that time. And that's a large part of the problem that a lot of people who analyze this case have with this satisfying this question of whether an intervening cause supersedes defendant conduct is a question of reasonable foreseeability. If it was reasonably foreseeable, then the defendant's conduct will be considered a proximate cause. So, in other words, they have to be able to tell that, hey, this is pretty foreseeable. He's going to go kill some kids. And this is the problem a lot of people have is like, hey, everyone there that morning, including the school, didn't think this was foreseeable. That's why they let him stay in school, despite the fact that he's drawing disturbing images. So now after it happens, after the fact, the state comes along and says, oh, this was reasonably foreseeable. He was going to go shoot up a school. Really? Then why did the school counselor not throw him out of the school? They want to see this thing happen? I'm fairly certain they didn't. If, however, the intervening act by the victim or third party was not reasonably foreseeable, example given, gross negligence, and this is what they want to, or intentional misconduct, then generally the causal link is severed and the defense conduct is not regarded a proximate cause of the. So what if there's was there not intentional misconduct here to separate? Then generally, so the court recognizes generally the causal link is severed. Intentional misconduct is not something that's foreseeable. Intentional misconduct of a third party. So in Jennifer's, you have to put yourself in Jennifer's shoes. And is it reasonably foreseeable to say that there's going to be misconduct by Ethan of the nature that's happening here? And then the court goes through quickly goes through the factual causation and fixates on this proximate cause because they have a big problem with proximate cause, even though I don't think the factual causation is so easy to establish. But they say but for the defendant's acts or omissions. This is the how they establish the but for part of the causation. So Ethan would not have killed the victims that day. On the basis of the evidence presented at the preliminary exam, a reasonable fact finder could conclude that Ethan would not have been able to shoot and kill 4 students, but for defense decision to purchase their mentally disturbed son a handgun. Their failure to properly secure the gun, and most importantly, their refusal to remove Ethan from school when he made overt threats to hurt other people. But they were clearly not overt threats to hurt other people. That's the problem. That's a major part of the problem. Morning, Melkor, 2 years as a member. God bless you, Melkor. Thank you so much. Member of the following. And I'm going to tell you something. Linda's pointing out here, there's testimony that when he was complaining that the father said to suck it up. That's true. That was definitely something that was alleged, that they showed a text message. The problem I have with this is the way we know this is a text message from a kid who everyone's saying is psychotic. And that text message was sent 7 months beforehand. Why don't you shoot up a school in May? It happened in April. In March or April. So the shooting happens on November 30th, 2021. This text message that the kid sent to a friend of his saying that when I complained to my father, I was told to suck it up, was sent when he was a freshman. I think he was a sophomore at the time. It's like they had a whole summer in between. And you're telling me that, oh, it's very foreseeable. It's very foreseeable that if you say suck it up, that the kid's going to go shoot up a school. It doesn't. Aside, I have questions on hearsay as to how it is that they allowed this statement in. To me, I think that's kind of crazy that they would allow this in because they can't even bring Ethan to the stand. Ethan's going to plead the fifth. His lawyers, Ethan's has a separate lawyers. His lawyer said if you put him on the stand, he's going to plead the fifth. Well, he could have been joking when he wrote that. You don't know that this happened. No one knows that this happened. So now what we have is these text messages end up testifying against Jennifer Crumbley, which I'm not even sure why, if the father said suck it up, that's coming into a trial of Jennifer Crumbley also. That sounds to me kind of crazy. You want to tell me if it's going to be I don't think it should be introduced in the trial of James Crumbley because these trials have been severed. Today is the trial. Now we have the trial of Jennifer Crumbley. James Crumbley's trial is not till March. And we're admitting statements. We're admitting statements from the father, which would be hearsay if the father said it, to the son, who you can't bring him in. No one's going to be testifying about these statements. Can Jennifer Crumbley assess whether or not this actually happened? Her husband, James, is going to plead the fifth. Ethan's going to plead the fifth. She can't ask anyone about this. And it happened 7 months before. Like, does anyone actually think that he was thinking about, like, my parents said, suck it up? He wrote it in a text message. The chances that he remembered it in November, or that had any influence on him in November, compared to the hundreds of thousands of different interactions he had between that text message and when he actually engaged in the shooting, seems incredibly remote. But because it's locked into a text message, we tend to fixate on that and say, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that text message. And we don't even know if he was telling the truth when he wrote it, because you can't cross-examine him. You can't cross-examine a text message. Let's get into the proximate cause, because this is very relevant. I'm still waiting here in case you're wondering. This is the trial, which looks like they're heating up, getting ready to come in there. I think it's important to have the contextual background as to what it is that the court's looking for when what the district attorney needs to establish under Michigan law if they're to obtain a conviction against Jennifer, and what it is what the yardstick is for Jennifer to try and defend from. So, subsequent to the trial court's defendants, we're going to skip this part here. Turning now to the district court's proximate cause determination, the relevant facts revealed that prior to the arrival of school on November 30th, or the relevant facts. Number one, defendants were aware that Ethan had been repeatedly experiencing significant episodes of hallucinations and or extreme paranoia. Ethan was in a distressed mental state because of the loss of his grandparents and family dog. Ethan himself realized his poor mental state such that he requested defendants to help him obtain medical assistance. Despite their knowledge, despite Jennifer's knowledge, I'm going to put in this context of this case, of Ethan's mental state, they purchased him a handgun, which was rarely accessible to Ethan. On November 29th, day before the shootings, Ethan was researching bullets while in school. That shouldn't be surprising. And during the first hour of class on November 30th, Ethan watched a video involving a shooting, and during his second hour, drew pictures of bullet and gun resembling the Sig Sauer, a person bleeding from bullet holes, and wrote, "Blood everywhere, the thoughts won't help me, my life is useless, and the world is dead." And that Jennifer was also presented with the significant modifications Ethan made to that worksheet, where he clearly intended to portray a different, happier message about the school and himself. Despite their knowledge of all these circumstances, when given the option to help Ethan and take him out of school, defendants did nothing. They were not even advised to take him home. The school counselor didn't say take him home. Oh, they did? I'm sorry, I might be mistaken. They're saying they did not contrary to recommendations. I thought that, why they let them stay? All right, but okay, at least they told him to go home. All right, so they ignored those recommendations. They did not contrary to the recommendations to Hopkins, take EC home and get immediate help. Nor when they decided to leave him at school, did they tell school officials about EC's history of mental health issues, nor explain to them that EC had access to a gun similar to the one he drew on the math sheet. I think it's pretty certain to me that they knew that the kid had mental health issues. They're calling down the parents because of concerns. You think they didn't have a conversation about his mental health issues? What the hell is the counselor talking to them about? What? The first question you have for the parents when they come in that morning is, does he have a history of mental health issues? Now, you might not be the first question, does he have access to a gun? Although, frankly, it seems like that should be in the line of questions at some point. But the first thing you would say is, he seems kind of disturbed. Does he have a history of mental health issues? And this court here is saying, well, they didn't tell him about the history of mental health issues. I can't understand. What the hell were they talking about? What the hell were they talking about? That's the first thing you ask. The defendants did not ask EC if he had the gun with him, nor did they look in his backpack. And when they left the school, defendants did not go home and ensure EC had not taken the gun. Given all those facts, it was non-abuse of discretion to conclude there were probable cause to believe the juror could conclude the reasonably foreseeable outcome of the defendant's alleged gross negligence was EC committing a shooting that day. I think that it's a very disturbing decision. One of the few reasonably foreseeable outcomes of failing to secure the firearm that was gifted to EC was that he would be accessible to EC in his mentally deteriorated condition. He might use it on unlawful ways. Yeah, but you're attaching everyone in the school. Everyone thought he was going to harm himself. That's what they were all afraid of, that he was going to harm himself. So you want to say because of it, they failed to worry. And this is one of the things I discussed when this case first came out. Let's assume they were negligent in stopping him from harming himself. Should that now be attached that, well, you should have done more to stop him from hurting himself? Because that's a fair point. Like, aren't you worried about him hurting himself? Could parents be sued for failing to stop a kid from committing self-harm? That would be novel as well.
Yeah. Outside the presence of the jury or in front of the jury?
Oh, no, I actually think we should do it in front of the jury.
Okay, I
That's
agree.
right.
I agree.
Counsel needs to order her client. I think that should happen outside the presence of the jury.
Right.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Mrs. Crumbley, could you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give is the truth, so help you God?
I-
And can you tell me your name?
Jennifer Crumbley?
Okay, we just have a few questions for you, okay?
Okay, Mrs. Crumbley, when we were in court on Friday, there was discussion about admitting the Facebook Messenger messages between yourself and James Crumbley. Correct. Do you recall that? Yes. And on Saturday, I came over to the jail to see you, and that was specifically a topic we discussed. Yes. Okay, and at this time, we have talked about how during the trial, there was talk about redacting portions of that Facebook Messenger thread pursuant to other orders, correct? And the court offered me the opportunity to redact portions of that record. Correct. And after you and I discussed it, it's fair to say that you and I believe that it would look like we are hiding evidence from the jury if they saw a redacted version of Exhibit 423, correct? Correct. Okay, please let me finish speaking before you start. Okay, so at this time, I have let the court know that we are not moving for any redactions and that Exhibit 423 will be admitted, showing your entire phone conversation with James on Facebook Messenger. And Your Honor, there's specific dates it's from, so I think I should put the dates on the record.
I can understand the fear
Might be on the-
of having the jury think that you're hiding something by
I'm sorry, I
redacting
don't have
something.
the exhibit. It wasn't with the initial folder I had. Do you know the dates?
January 21.
Okay, so
Yeah, early 2021.
it's the entire Facebook Messenger thread between you and Mr. Crumbley, starting in January of 2021, and it goes up through the events that lead us here today. Correct. Okay, is it your decision to allow those Facebook messages to be admitted through?
The reason they would do this is because it's hearsay, because
Yes. And you and I have talked
it could be
about
self-incriminating.
pros and cons of redacting those exhibits. Correct. And at this time, you understand they will be admitted without any redactions. I do.
And just a few.
Sure.
Mrs. Crumbley, you understand that Exhibit 423 won't just be given to the jury, but the prosecution can go through that with either you on a cross-examination or with other witnesses.
Correct.
And you consulted with your attorney specifically about that point?
Yes.
And it is your decision as a defendant in the case, in consultation with your attorney as part of trial strategy, to admit this entire exhibit?
Yes.
And to be clear, this is the Facebook message thread between Jennifer and James Crumbley beginning January 1, 2021. It's over 2,000 pages long.
Exhibit
Wow.
423.
And Mrs. Crumbley, you understand that throughout the pendency of this case, your attorney on your behalf has sought to exclude certain themes or topics of evidence, in some cases successfully, yet this Facebook conversation does touch upon some of those.
I understand.
And you still want 423 to be admitted into evidence and referenced by the prosecution and defense.
Yes.
I'm satisfied.
They're afraid. The reason they're going through this is called voir dire when they question the defendant. They're afraid there's going to be an appeal that they violated her Fifth Amendment rights if this is improperly
Oh,
admitted.
yes, okay.
So the judge was going to grant a redaction, and her attorneys said, "We don't want to have redactions. That's going to make her look guilty. We'd rather have the whole thing coming in together." That's clearly a conversation that that she just testified that they had after court concluded on Friday. So that's what they are. That's why they're agreeing and saying don't redact it, even though some of it is stuff that they really wouldn't want in there. And I guess it's possible that if I agree with the attorney's thought process that if you redact stuff, then it could be the jury is going to misinterpret those redactions as the mother saying something truly terrible, like I don't care if he shoots up a school, like that's the part that was redacted. So
All right for the jury?
Good morning, you may be seated. Thank you again for being timely. We weren't ignoring you. We were
The
just
sound
sort
is
of
at max
moving
volume.
away. So every day
I'm seeing
takes
this.
some certain preparation, so we appreciate you. Who's the next witness?
I can turn myself down
Your Honor, I'm sorry, may I please?
to try and balance.
Okay. Your Honor, on Friday, I think it was very clear beyond a reasonable doubt, I had difficulty and cannot use technology. In my frustration, I made a comment that was offensive to victims' families, and I did it absolutely by accident as I was struggling with my computer. I am apologizing for that comment. I want to apologize to the jurors, to the audience, to all involved, and specifically to the victims and the families of the victims. I truly did not mean to say the comment I made.
I believe that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do you want to approach just for a second? I'm supposed to ask the camera person to cut them off. Yeah. Please move.
A lot of people zero in on this whole purchase of a gun for a child who is depressed or having some sort of emotional issues. There's white noise now, which is why there's no volume, that they don't want anyone to hear.
Ms. Kira.
But even the appellate court in Michigan said sometimes buying a gun for a troubled kid could be it could be therapeutic.
Good morning. Could you raise your right hand?
You teach them responsibility.
Swear or affirm the testimony about to give is the truth to help you God.
I do.
All right, could you be seated and then would you state your name for the record and spell your first and last name, please?
My name is Kira Kennett, Kirapennoc.
Thank you. Go ahead, prosecutor.
Good morning. Good morning. Kira, can you tell the jury how old you are? I'm 27.
Okay, and you actually have a pretty robust career at 27. Can you tell the jury what you do?
I own and run a horse farm. We do boarding and lessons and training
And how long have you been owning and running the farm?
since May of 21.
Okay. You said for the people in the jury or counsel, explain what a horse farm actually does. You said boarding and riding lessons, but what does that actually mean?
So people will own horses and they don't always have the means to have them at their house. So they will board them over at my place. So I take care of them. I feed them, I water them, I clean up after them. And then they can come visit their horses whenever they want.
Okay. And so the boarding includes feeding and watering the horse, that's all one price.
Yes, it also includes like cleaning up after them, but I mean, really just any of the care that they might need for just general living.
Okay, and how much is the cost of boarding one horse?
Board at that time was $400 for pasture board, so if their horse is outside 24/7 with access to a shelter if they wanted to use it.
Okay, 400 per horse.
Yes.
Okay. What's not included in boarding?
Vet bills, so if, you know, the vet has to come out and do something with the horse. The farrier, so the person
Again,
that works
what
out with the gate.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's basically kind of a pedicure for the horse, so that has to happen every 6 to 8 weeks. And then also lessons too. Lessons are not included, so those are separate.
And how much are lessons?
$35.
And how much for the vet bill, a vet or a farrier?
It really just depends on the horse, and then like what that horse needs. So, you know, a horse needs routine vaccinations each year and just kind of general checkup. But there are other expenses as for like, you know, emergency vet calls. So your horse injured themselves or is colicking, and then we have to have an unscheduled appointment with the vet.
Okay, so an average appointment, not including any of the services or the medicine or procedures, would be around what?
It really varies, but I would say probably maybe at least $100.
Okay. And the vet comes to the barn.
Yes,
Okay. Do you know someone named Jennifer Crumbley?
I do.
Do you see her in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you describe something she's wearing for the court?
She has glasses on.
And she's seated over at that.
Point to her.
May the record reflect she's properly identified Jennifer Crumbley.
The record will reflect in the
Just
court
point to her.
identification of the defendant, Jennifer Crumbley.
That woman in the courtroom with
You
glasses.
also know James Crumbley.
I do.
Okay, when did you meet the two of them? At the same time or separate times?
I believe that I had met Jennifer first, and it was probably between 3 and 5 years ago that I had actually like met them for the first time, but not actually gotten to know them.
Okay, when you met the two of them, how many horses did they own?
One.
And did you meet them because they wanted to board at your farm?
No, they were boarding their horse at a barn that one of my friends had worked at.
I could be.
And then at some point, did they change their barn?
Yes.
When was that, if you know?
I do not remember the exact day or year, but they ended up moving to the barn that I had priorly boarded at before I bought my farm.
Okay, when they did board their horses at your farm, correct?
Yes.
All right, when, about what time, year, month?
They started boarding their horses, which by then they had bought the second horse. They had started boarding, I believe, in the July time period of 21.
Okay. Who did you know better, James or Jennifer?
Jennifer.
All right, and can you describe Jennifer's general demeanor when you were working with her? And well, back up. What kind of interactions would you have with Jennifer, and what? Just talking about the horse that she was boarding, or was there anything else that you did with Jennifer?
A majority of our conversations were related to the horses and maybe talking about goals for the future.
Horse
for
stuff.
showing or just training goals in general to
That's what you would expect.
figure out the best plan of action for the lessons that I was giving.
So, did you give her lessons?
I did.
Okay, how often would you give her a lesson?
I would say between 2 and 3 times a week.
Okay, and when did
They're
that
trying to show that she cared more about her
Usually
horses
in
than
the
she cared about
evenings.
her kid.
So,
To try and portray her as a bad person.
did Jennifer come to the
Well, maybe
to the
she
barn,
was.
in the evenings during the weekdays, or was it on weekends, or both?
Well, she came in the evenings during the week, usually after work, and then weekends
A large part of the state's case is that she was very fixated on her horses and insufficiently
And did you say how many times? during
concerned
the
with her
week?
child compared to
The
her
horses.
horses.
I would say probably at least 2 to 3 times during the week.
And about on the average, what time would she arrive?
About 4:35-ish.
Okay. And stay about how long, if you know?
I'll do
A
that.
couple hours, so at least maybe 2 to 3 hours.
And was that just getting lessons or were there other things that she was doing?
Just getting her horse ready for a lesson and doing the lesson.
Are my volume levels more balanced now?
Up to their pasture. And then just everybody at the barn is pretty friendly. Everybody will talk. So just small conversation.
So the boarding and the feeding is just the basic care. Is there a lot more things you have to do to take care of a horse if you're the owner?
The owner pays the barn where the horse is boarded at to do the general care of the horse, like the day-to-day things such as giving them water and grain and hay and cleaning up after them and maybe changing blankets and different things to make sure that they stay warm.
So there's a amended exhibit which includes the Facebook messages between Jennifer and James. Were they both taking care of the horses? And the reason I ask is
I'm gonna see if I
there
can
seems to
find a
be
different
lot of
feed.
Communication between the two of them.
So I'm getting a
about
bunch of
taking
people
care of the
complaining
horses.
about
So I'm
this.
trying to get at what else would they be doing other than just feeding the horse and you said cooling it off and taking it. I'm not a horse person, so taking it out to pasture and does it have to be? You have to ride your horses. Like what's the responsibility there?
Most likely what they might be talking about is maybe some of the vet care. So I know one of their horses had most mud fever, kind of a fungus stuff that might grow on the legs of a horse.
All right, I'm gonna bring this over. We'll try CBS. This is streaming in a bunch of places. We'll try this one out.
A fungus stuff that might grow on the legs of
I think that's
a
better.
horse with wet weather. And that usually is something that ends up needing a vet to intervene with just medication to help take care of it. So it might be related to maybe the vet bills and maybe just vet appointments related to taking care of the horses.
Okay. And you said they own 2 horses. What are their names?
One is named Billy and one is named Shorty.
What kind of horses were there in terms of value of the horses? There, I know horses can be very expensive to purchase. Where do these horses fall on that continuum?
Well, they were both thoroughbreds. So
That's
What
all
the-
for us here on air for day 3 of the Jennifer Crumbley trial. We'll be back with the latest live on CBS News Detroit afternoon. However, you can catch the entire trial uninterrupted over on our stream with the CBS Detroit app or Pluto TV. Thanks for watching.
Oh, you suck. Oh, for the love of God.
at night, and she was also drinking.
Okay. How do the people that board your horses and have lessons, give lessons, how do they pay you?
Your Honor, I need to make an objection. The witness's answer was in part non-responsive, and I just instructed the record.
Yeah, it was, unless there's follow-up, I think it was somewhat unresponsive.
The Facebook message string that was just submitted details exactly how the horse was purchased, so I'm happy to move on and we'll deal with it then.
I don't know, I haven't read those. So.
The portion I'm objecting to is the unnecessary information about she was drinking at the time.
Okay.
I think it's relevant. I think if you're buying a $5,000 horse while you were drinking late at night is relevant to the case and the relationship that Jennifer Crumbley had in her priorities, and as well as the fact that the Facebook message string that was just stipulated to an admission without redactions, like, absolutely discusses that.
Okay, next question.
How do people pay? Cash, check, credit card?
It can be any of those. A lot of people now use online payments like Venmo.
Okay. How did the Crumbleys pay you for your services?
Check.
And did James ever take lessons?
I have given him a few lessons.
So who was taking care of the horse during the day? Did Jennifer ever come during the day, during the week, or was it James, or did they both?
Well, the general care every day was done by the barn. But say if there was a need to have the vet out, we usually like to have the owners present. So they would usually have one of them at whatever vet appointment.
Okay. So you just testified they moved their horses to your barn July of 2021. You knew them approximately a year before that, 2 years?
They had boarded at the barn that I had my horses boarded at prior to buying my farm. I do not recall how much time we had boarded together there, but I had met them a couple years prior to
Okay,
that.
that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
So you known them a couple years before they came to your barn?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know that if Jennifer had a son,
Yes.
and did you ever meet their son?
I may have met him maybe once or twice.
Where, if you know, where was that? Was it at your barn?
It was not at my barn.
Okay. Did you ever see their son come to your barn?
No, I did not.
So the 2 to 3 times a week, and on the
I
weekend,
agree.
when
It's crazy.
Jennifer would visit, did she bring anybody with her?
Usually James. I don't remember anybody else really coming out and with her.
Do you allow kids at the barn?
Yes, we do.
And what are the kids that are at the barn usually doing?
Usually doing lessons. You know, some of the kids that are doing lessons, they have siblings that are brought out, so they just kind of maybe occupy their time with the barn cats or seeing the other horses on the property.
Okay. And do you have any family oriented activities or get-togethers?
We've had a family reunion.
This feels very thorough.
Meaning
before, but
parties or activities that children are welcome to come to?
yes, all of
This is
the
very thorough.
events that we might have at the farm, kids are invited to. Like we've had parties like Halloween party before too.
Okay, around Halloween of 2021, do you remember if you had a Halloween party?
Yes, we did.
He was
Do you know
15 when he
it
killed
was
him,
And about what time of day it was?
but charged as an adult.
I do not remember what day it was, but I know that it was afternoon, evening-ish.
Was it on Halloween or before Halloween?
It was before Halloween.
Okay, and it was a weekday or weeknight?
It was on a weekend, I believe.
A Friday or Saturday?
Yes.
Did Jennifer come to that party?
Yes.
And how do you remember that?
I remember that both Jennifer and James had come to the party, and they were dressed up.
Ooh.
And like our parties, we include the horses, so people will also dress their horses up for.
They put Halloween
party.
costumes on horses?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Okay, and do you know if they dressed their horses up that year?
Not really dressing them up. They wanted to, but they had also
I was looking at
said
Law
that
and
they
Crime,
had
and they have a
another
different.
party to go to after,
They're covering something else.
after mine.
So you did not see their son that night?
I did not.
Okay. Did Jennifer talk to you about her son?
Not a ton. But every once in a while she would mention something about him.
And what, do you remember things that she would say?
Usually it was along
Gonna do
the
normal
lines
kid
of,
things.
she was having problems with him, or he.
Well, it is
he wasn't
better.
acting normal. She had called him weird before. She wanted him to do normal kid things.
We're going to switch over here. So I think this is louder.
Okay.
But I never remember her saying anything about, like, really bringing him out to the barn much.
Thank you, brother.
or really doing much. I mean, they would go on vacations. I did hear about some vacations that they had gone on, but really there was not much talk about her son.
Did she ever refer to him as a certain name? Did she speak negatively about him, or was it just, or positively?
There was nothing truly positive when she was talking about him.
So
There were quite a few times that she had voiced that he was an oopsie baby.
What does that mean? I'm sorry.
And
What did you understand that to?
I understood it as
Your
just
Honor, objection
this
as
is
to speculation and also as to relevance.
Well, I guess I wonder how it is relevant.
I think if you're referring to a teenager still as an oopsie baby, I think it's relevant to what kind of relationship you had with them. And what kind of,
speculative. No,
um,
that's speculative.
Defense counsels described her client an opening as hypervigilant. And so I think that the prosecution's entitled to
Well, I think their relationship is relevant. When you say your definition of an oopsie baby, are you using your own definition of what that means or hers?
my take on what the feelings that I have gotten that she has not really talked
Your
about.
Honor, you're asking if it's her opinion. I'm sorry, she's going
She did,
into
and
her
I'll
opinion.
clear it up. We don't,
Okay.
unfortunately, your feelings about it are
Right.
not what's relevant here.
Correct.
So did she ever explain what that meant?
She never truly explained what that had meant.
Okay. How long of a drive is the barn from Oxford, the village of Oxford, if you know?
I would say about 20 minutes.
Okay. What is the way that you would communicate with Jennifer?
Usually through Facebook Messenger.
And do you know why that is? Is that the way you prefer to communicate?
I don't really mind what way to communicate. It seems like Facebook Messenger is how a lot of people communicate nowadays.
Okay, does the barn have Wi-Fi?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so do you have problems communicating when you're at the barn?
It depends on how good the service wants to be at the barn.
It was double jeopardy,
Some
but
days it's really good, and then other days there's not
it's interesting
great
comment.
service.
All right.
We'll come back to this.
And I would assume most of the people at the barn, that's just people deal with that and they know that.
Yes.
Okay. Would you describe Jennifer, did you have a friendship or was it more just business?
It was mainly business. We had friendly talk, but I would not say that we were close friends.
Really? I would have thought you were besties the way you were describing your
When you
relationship.
buy a horse and it doesn't, it's not near where you are, how do you get it from like a different state to the barn?
Usually you can pay somebody to haul the horse over to the new location for you, or you can go pick it up if you have a trailer.
And do you know what was the second horse's name that was purchased?
Billy.
Billy. Do you know how he was brought to the barn?
He was shipped by someone that does a lot of cross-country hauling.
And do you remember about what month and year that was?
It was in the beginning of the year that she had gotten him, which I do not remember exactly when she had gotten
Did she get him before she came to your barn or after?
him. Before.
Okay, but so how did you know what was your relationship like then, before she was at the barn?
Before she was at my barn.
Yes, your relationship.
I would give her some lessons, and it was mainly business.
And was she asking for advice about which horse to buy or how to buy the horse?
Not a lot, but just kind of, just general questions of, what might work for a good horse for what she wanted to do.
Okay, I guess what I'm getting at is how do you know how the horse was shipped?
Because she had
How is this
told
relevant?
me about, where he was, that he was in a different state, and that she would just have him shipped.
Okay, do you know approximately how much that costs?
Objection
I do
relevant.
not. It varies
cares?
on who you use to haul a horse, and then also just, the cost of, you know, the fuel and mileage and, you
This
know,
is so
everybody
ridiculous.
kind of has their own fees if they.
More than 500, less than 500?
Can we move along?
Most likely more than 500.
Okay. Can you talk to me a little bit about the health concerns or issues with the two horses? Did they need a lot of extra care? Like, were they given a lot of extra care
Given extra care by the vet.
by the Crumbleys, by Jennifer?
They would come out and like, you know, the mud fever that we were dealing with, and they had put medication on Billy's legs for that. But there were some issues lameness wise with their newest horse, Billy, that they had still had to have the vet out for to diagnose what the problem was.
Were they on any other medications or supplements?
I don't understand. If they were neglectful of their
supplements,
horse, would that mean they were better
yes.
parents?
Medication, not that I know of.
What's the cost of supplements for a horse?
Well, it depends on what you want to have your horse on. I know that both Billy and Shorty were on a lot of supplements, and it
This is
probably
the
cost
angle, but it's pretty stupid
over
because
$100.
if they were
probably
neglectful of
closer
their
to
horse, I would say, you
$200
see,
per
they're
month per
neglectful
horse.
people. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. Whether they were attentive or neglectful, you can use that against her. That's what's so stupid about this.
All right, I'm gonna draw your attention to November 30th, 2021. You remember that day?
Yes.
All right. What was the interaction you had with Jennifer Crumbley the day before that? So that was a Tuesday. Did you see her at the barn on Monday?
I do not remember. I think she was planning on coming out, but I don't remember exactly.
Okay. Did you have any communication with her that previous weekend?
The previous weekend before the 30th?
Yes, after Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And do you remember what that was about?
I remember wanting to set up lessons. I don't remember exactly
Okay.
anything else.
In your Facebook communications, did Jennifer ever mention going to a shooting range that summer or leading up to that fall?
She had mentioned that she was going to, but I don't really remember a lot of
Okay,
that.
was that in the summer or the fall?
I would believe summer and fall.
Okay. Were you aware that she, do you follow her on social media?
I do.
Did you see the post that she posted about buying her son a Christmas present?
I did.
All right. Did you discuss it with her?
I did not.
Did you see it before the shooting or after?
I do not remember. I'm on social media, but not very frequent.
Okay. So the morning of November 30th, what was going on with their horses?
Their horse Billy needed the medication from the vet to help treat his mud fever because we couldn't fix it with the products that we were trying before, and his legs were swollen.
Okay, and what was being done about it?
There was some ointment that was given to them by the vet to put on his legs.
That morning?
I believe they picked it up from the vet to put on the legs, because I remember James wanting to bring the medication out and put it on Billy's legs.
Okay, so did James go to the barn that morning?
Yes, he did.
Okay. And do you know from like what time to what time?
It was in the morning, but I don't recall what time.
Okay, and were you having conversations over Facebook Messenger with Jennifer during that time about the vet?
Not really.
Okay. Did you speak with her about this mud fever frequently?
I had mentioned it to her because it's not normal for a horse's legs to swell up like his did. Was just a mild case of this mud fever. So we had to have a little bit more involvement of getting that taken care of by having an ointment made by the vet that took care of it.
Okay. Was Jennifer planning on coming to the barn that night?
Yes.
And do you remember why?
We were going to do a lesson, a riding lesson.
By the way, there's
Did
no
she end
horse
up going
medicine on
back?
this stream. I'm not a
She
horse
did not.
medicine expert. Neither is this witness.
There was a text sent at what's, including in what's been previously admitted, as exhibit 130, Your Honor.
130.
Can you read the top text there, and which one is you? Are you blue or black?
I am blue.
Okay, so can you read the text that you sent at, what does it say, 10:18 a.m. on the 30th?
Yes. Boys are needing supplements for tonight, and Shorty lost a bell boot again.
What's a bell boot?
It is it's like a rubber boot that goes over the horse's foot to help prevent. Well, we used it on Shorty for because he would rip his shoes off all the time. He had metal shoes on, and he would pull his shoes off. So if you put a bell boot on, it helps to reduce the chance of them pulling a shoe.
Okay, and you're telling her why?
I was telling her to have her bring out another boot to replace the one that he had torn off.
So it's her responsibility to do that?
Correct.
Okay, and she responds, can you read that text?
Okay, I'll bring some out later. Just had to go to my son's school and meet his counselor. Shit day.
All right, so she responds to you in about 20, 30 minutes.
Yes. It
Okay.
looks like it.
Okay, and then is this continued on that same message? It's just another message at the same time, or was
Yes.
it later? Okay, can you read that?
Yeah, I still plan on doing the lesson. Everything's okay. He's just having a hard time after losing Tank, his friend, going away to a treatment facility, and who knows what else. But he was just caught drawing this on a math test or a math assignment today.
All right, and this is the worksheet that's been previously submitted, Your Honor. It's exhibit 74. Is there really?
Yeah. You need to write down that's
Those of you joined late, I can share with you. I don't know if we're gonna be able to see it on the screen. But this is the
One moment, Your Honor.
this is the worksheet that he drew on November 30th.
While he's doing that, Kira, did Jennifer ever participate in any shows or competitions?
She had done one show with us
And where was that?
at a farm right down the road.
Okay, do you know if she ever traveled for competitions or horse shows?
Not to my knowledge outside of when I had taken the horse.
May I approach, Your Honor? So this is exhibit 74. And can you tell the jury what that is?
That is the math test that Jennifer had sent me that morning of what her son had drawn on the math test.
All right, and did you take a close look at it when she sent it to you?
I did look at it, but I did not open it as soon as she had sent it to me. I saw it later.
Okay, how much later?
I believe that it was before the shooting had occurred. But after the shooting had happened, I had looked at the math test even closer.
Okay, so this is important, so I want to make sure I ask the question in the right way. You took a look at it, and you remember that. Is there a reason why?
I remembered saying that he had needed horse therapy. and
Okay.
She should bring him out for some horse therapy.
All right, okay, we're gonna get to that. Can you do the next slide? So this is from who? You or Jennifer?
He needed horse therapy.
This message was from Jennifer.
Can you read it, please?
as long as I can get out there early enough, because I had to leave work for an hour and I have a meeting in Southfield at 3:00, but I should be done with that by 4:00. I plan on being there, plus the vet said it's better for him to move around and keep it circulation going while he's dealing with mud fever. Good
And
times.
This is designed to
Okay, so
show
the
that
first
she's
thing
more
I wanna
concerned with
point
the
out that you
horse on
received
November
from her
30th
about
than
the
she is with
lesson
her
was
son
10:58.
disturbed
remember?
imagery.
I'm sorry, yes.
So this is relevant.
10:58. Okay, and so this is all part of the same conversation?
Yes.
All right, and then
Oh, snap. Oh, snap. So this part here, they're trying to show that on the day in question, the mother was
and she
negligent.
responds,
I don't know, maybe brush a small horse so he's not, oh, that's, sorry.
oh, sorry, I had the
Yeah,
same problem.
no, I was trying to figure
Sorry.
out if there was more to that message there, but it was down. I don't know, maybe brush a small horse so he's not intimidated, LOL.
And she responds,
I responded,
Oh.
Mo would be perfect, and she responded with, okay.
all right, and the next slide.
Make it a family event coming out to the barn. Really though, I've seen some amazing things done with horses with kids.
And at this point, you testified early, you hadn't ever seen him come to the barn.
Not to my farm, and I vaguely remember maybe seeing him once at the previous farm.
A few years prior.
Yes,
Okay. And her response,
he needs something.
and you responded, even though there seems to be a,
I can still read it. It
Okay.
says, let's make him a cowboy.
and
And then-
Jennifer responds,
LOL, mom goals for real.
all right. So that exchange ends, and then the next text you get from her Facebook message is at 2:36 p.m. that day.
Correct. That says, Kira, I will
Okay, hold on
not.
a second. What, when did you first hear about the shooting?
I had actually heard about the shooting when, one of my students' moms had called me, in that afternoon and said that they would not be out later for their lesson because of the shooting.
All right, and what was your first thought, Kira?
My first thought is that I knew who the shooter was by the math test that was sent to me.
All right, that's a heavy thing to think. Talk to me about why that was
Speculation.
your first thought.
Who cares? Relevance.
It's not normal for somebody to draw these things on a test in school or even really think about these things, especially in a school setting, but really ever.
Okay, so did you then go back and take another look at the worksheet?
Yes.
All right. Did you talk to anybody about this at the time?
I had talked to
We'll talk about this
my
We're
parents.
gonna break.
I had
It's a good
told
question.
them that I believed that I knew who the shooter was, and I explained
In
why.
short, the school
Okay.
didn't know about the gun.
And at some
That's
point,
why
your father
they're
actually
claiming
called the
there's a
tip line,
difference.
correct?
Yes.
When did you verify that it was in fact her son? Around what time, if you know?
I do not remember when I had verified that it was her son.
Okay, so let's go back to the text message at 2:36, and we know the shooting started at around 12:51.
And again, this is the drawing.
So this is a couple,
That's
this
the
is-
drawing right there.
and almost an hour and a half after the shooting. She texts you what?
Kira, I won't be there tonight.
And you respond?
It's okay. Want me to work Billy for you?
And she says,
Yes, please.
okay, and talk to me about the next text and the picture.
It says just brought him in, and it's a picture of Billy.
All right. Did you text her photos or message her photos a lot of the horses?
I would send her pictures as I took them. I tried to be good about taking pictures of the horses.
Okay, and the next slide. This is at 4:07.
I said, hey, is everything okay? I heard there was a shooting at Oxford High School. Is Ethan okay?
And then at 4:21, you send another text? Can you read it
If
to
you
them?
need anything, please let me know. And then under that, Oh, no, that's the same
Okay.
message that's up there.
She responds at 4:42 and says what?
I need to sell my horse's stat.
And what did you respond to her?
I responded with, oh no, this was what I was worried about.
Okay, can I stop you there? What did you mean by that?
I had the feeling that her son was the shooter, and that
Good.
with that, the horses would most likely have to be sold.
Okay, but
Why?
it doesn't say that, and
Why?
you
Why would
came to that conclusion.
what? Why are they?
Oh no,
What?
this is what I was worried about.
Is a school shooting? Your son
Because of
did.
some of
So
the
now you have to sell
information
horses.
outside of what she
No,
actually
it's in
texted.
Correct.
Okay. And you say what about the horses?
But for lawyer fees?
I said, if you're serious, I will gladly buy Billy for sure.
And
And then I asked how much, and she said, I paid $5,000 for him.
okay, about an hour and a half later, you respond. Oh no, no, 6:24. You say what?
I had said, do you want $5,000 for him, or do you want more?
In her response,
My
Yeah.
head is spinning right now. Is 8 too much?
and she says,
I
You say-
said, I would gladly give you 8 if I could afford it. I really only have $5,000 to spend.
You should have offered
You
the
could ask
5K.
Angela if she would buy him for 8. Angela would probably buy him.
okay. Do you buy and sell horses a lot?
I do not.
Okay, have you bought a horse from somebody before?
I have bought horses before.
Okay, is that something that you normally do via check, cashier's check, cash?
It depends on the situation.
Your
Um,
Honor, I would just object to relevance.
Your Honor, this is part of a lot of evidence we're introducing about going to flight and the need for actual cash.
I'm gonna allow it.
Cash for flight.
So at
So
6:47.
this
she
woman
texts-
figured they're
she
gonna
messages you
flee.
Again, what does it say?
That's why they're
I
gonna need
won't
money.
have my cell phone.
And you respond,
Do what you need to do. I will take good care of your boys here.
and the next slide. She says what?
I can be reached through here. I do not have my cell phone currently on a track phone.
And that is still the 30th, but it's at 10:21 PM.
Yes.
All right, and can you read what you responded?
Do you need me to do anything for you? I'm not sure you should.
We have a clean copy.
And I know they fled, but at the time
trying
that
to
the
find
kid,
a
the
paper copy
shooting
that
first
doesn't have
happens,
that.
you don't think, oh,
Um,
their kid just shot
so
at school. They're
prominent,
probably
and
going
it's
to flee the
one of it.
police. No one would think such a thing. Because no parent had ever been charged before. Why would they be fleeing?
Okay, let's talk about this. Do you know where these, at some point did the law enforcement ask you if you communicated with Jennifer?
How do you mean that?
At some point, did you give the screenshots of these messages to law enforcement?
I did.
Okay, so part of the problem, these are screenshots. Do you know, is that correct?
Yes, they are screenshots.
Okay, I'm gonna approach with the actual paper copy to see if maybe this is a little easier to read. It's just cut off, so let's just do this.
Yeah. I'm not.
Okay,
entirely sure.
We'll clear it up because we have a complete, but
Yeah.
can you just read what you can understand?
On this next, all right, it says story being uncovered, already seeing some stuff on Facebook, people are figuring out what's going on.
And she responds,
I'm off Facebook.
okay, and the next slide?
I'm still in shock. What did Angela post?
Okay, so that text that you couldn't read, do you remember, was that about Angela?
I do not recall.
Okay, and she responds, you respond,
I said, can you receive pictures? I'll screenshot it. And she said, yes, I'm here. And then I sent her a screenshot.
Do you remember what the screenshot, without reading exactly what it said, what the nature of it was?
The poster had been extremely frustrated and upset about what happened with the shooting.
Okay, and were there any threats in that screenshot?
I do not remember.
Okay, we'll pull it up. Hold on 1 second. Okay, all right, so the next time you text her at 10:45, can you tell the jury what you said?
I cannot believe people on Facebook. I'm so sorry you're having to deal with this stuff.
Okay, and because I know this is going to be something council wants to talk to you about, can you tell us what were you feeling at that moment when this was going on about Jennifer and the whole situation?
I was extremely upset about the situation.
Okay, can you give me a little more than extremely upset?
I didn't really know what to think. I couldn't believe that this had happened, and especially so close to, you know, home. And I was concerned about what was going to happen in the future
Okay,
with just my farm in general.
and you at the time were how old?
That was
2 years ago.
2 years ago. I was 25.
All right, and were you feeling bad for Jennifer?
I did not truly feel
I
bad
hated her.
for Jennifer.
I hated her.
Was upset that this had happened to all of the
Objection,
kids and
relevance.
families, and I wanted to figure out how I could possibly get more information to help make sure that things were taken care of.
Okay, were there any students at Oxford that you gave lessons to or were at the barn? What is the community like there?
Relevant.
Yes, I give lessons to a few people from Oxford.
Okay. All right, the next slide. This
I
is
always
11
put
PM
in the
that
bottom
night.
the
Can
scroll
you read your text?
who's on the stand.
Did you guys leave
To
the
make it
medication
easier for people who
Billy's
join
legs?
late.
If not, no worries. I'll just put my stuff on him.
And she responds,
I'll bring by tomorrow. We're in hotel in Lapeer, news live at our house.
and you respond,
No problem.
and then 11:40 you say what?
Please stay safe.
Next slide. This is a screenshot that you sent or she sent?
She had sent me,
Okay, and she responded,
I can't go home.
okay. And did you read those?
What I could just from the screenshot.
Okay, did you view those as threats to her life?
Your Honor, I would object as to her opinion.
Yes, sustain.
Okay, the text, the screenshot speaks for itself. Next slide. Okay, go ahead.
Objection to
I'm
testify
concerned
now.
for you guys. You should stay.
All right, while we're getting a copy that actually is clear,
I plan
why are
on
you
watching this
concerned?
tonight. I plan on
Um,
watching the Murdoch
why were
I
you concerned?
hearing
This was the
my
text
tonight.
message.
my
I'm hoping it's not
concern
going to take very long.
was more for the safety of myself and the people at my farm. And
But yeah, thank
here
you for calling
in
that.
that
out.
concern, I am showing sympathy to hopefully figure out maybe more information on, like, you know, what is going to happen if they were going to try to come to my farm, or if people were going to show up.
What was the concern?
My concern about them coming to the farm, knowing about the situation that had just happened, is that they may steal things to sell to get money to pay for the.
Your Honor, I would
How is
object
this
to
relevance?
about her thoughts and feelings about stealing. This is irrelevant and prejudicial.
She's a fact witness. Ask her facts and fact questions.
Your Honor, she is most likely going to be asked by counsel to explain that she was worried about her safety. And so I'm asking her what she was really worried about.
Why?
I'm happy to save it on to redirect them.
Okay.
And then she responds what?
I have my pets at home. I'm sorry, I don't want to put anyone at risk. I don't know what to do.
Okay, her pet's at home. Did you know anything about her pets?
I know that she had a dog, at least still, and I think she had a cat.
Okay. And this was still the night of the shooting,
Yes.
the next day. And in fact, this is at 11:59 p.m. after she says, I'm concerned about my pets. What do you respond?
Best thing you can do is just be honest about things. I'm not sure, I'm wondering about even buying your horses, if that would drag me into this, or if you just sign them over to me.
Okay, and then there's content we have to clear up, but can you read the last sentence or the two last sentences?
The two last sentences. I see people saying you're using money from the horses to get a better lawyer or something. People are ridiculous.
All right, next slide.
I'm selling my house too. Lawyer will cost every bit of $200,000, and I don't think that, I think it will be questioned. You won't get dragged in. And then I had responded with,
Safe to say you might have been worried you would be called to testify on a high, yeah. Okay, what is your,
most I can afford to pay is $5K. Barrier is coming out Thursday also.
and she responds,
That's
Wow.
signed, sold. And
okay,
then she had said, I'll sign Tori over to you.
all right, next slide.
Okay, want to sign them over tomorrow? I can either write personal check or I can go get money order. I'm not sure I have the cash on me. Can see if they'll let me withdraw that much.
So do you keep that kind of cash at the barn with you?
Relevant.
I do not.
Who cares?
In her response,
I'm bawling right now, Kira. My son ruined so many lives today.
okay, so is,
How is any of this relevant to causation?
is this all the 11:59, that whole string, if you know?
I do
Can you
not
look on the
know. It's
paper copy?
right around in that time. There's no time on this.
Do you see the time?
There is no time in those messages. The last time it shows where the time
Okay, let's move
was.
on. The next, she says, I'm bawling, my son ruined so many lives today. And the next slide,
Then I so wish I could help you out more. I'm still in shock too. Take it one day at a time. Be honest about everything. It should help you guys through this.
and then you say, if you guys need anything, and I'll do what I can for you, and I'll take good care of the boys. Who are you talking about?
I am talking about both of their horses.
Okay, she responds,
I know you will.
and then your response?
Try to rest some. You'll need it. We can talk more tomorrow about the boys.
And she says what?
Okay, thanks for not judging unlike the whole world.
Okay,
Which she was judging. She was very much judging.
I know
Very
you and
much
James,
judging.
and this doesn't even remotely make me think that it's your fault. It sounds like Ethan was a troubled kid. It's unfortunate this happened because he did ruin a lot of, and I,
what's that? Can you read the last few sentences?
yeah, the last few sentences of that, that message says, who knows, try to stay calm as collected as you can.
Okay, I'm gonna approach, this is another copy, so you don't have to struggle with the,
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's a lot clearer.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hold on one moment, Your Honor. Okay, we're gonna put up on the screen a better copy so that you don't have to sort of guess what you said in between sentences. One moment.
So again,
Okay.
the reason for this this
So
witness
we've
is
been
to
over
show
this.
that
This
she
is
was
at-
much more concerned
we'll
with
start at
horses than her own child.
45. Can you go to scroll down? Okay, go back. All right, can you read that full message up from 11:44, the night of the shooting, that you wrote in blue?
I'm concerned for you guys. You should stay where you are. I'm concerned for you even coming out here. I don't want people finding out about your horses or hurting you while you are here.
Okay. And she responds,
I have my pets at home.
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't want to put anyone at risk. I don't know what to do.
And you respond, again, rereading this because there's a line missing, go ahead.
Best thing you can do is just be honest about things. I'm not sure. I'm wondering about even buying your horses, if that would drag me into this, or if you just sign them over to me, if that would be better for both of us. I could see people saying you're using money from the horses to get a better lawyer or something. People are ridiculous.
Okay. And she responds, I'm selling my house too. We've already entered this. It's gonna cost everybody $200,000 and I don't think it will be questioned. You shouldn't get dragged in. And then again, we've read these texts, you said you don't have $5,000, or that's the most you can afford to pay. Scrolling down. She agrees to that and you tell her you don't know if you can withdraw $5,000, correct?
Correct.
All right. All right, can you read that text again in the blue that you sent her now that it's complete?
I so wish I could help you out more. I am still in shock too. Take it one day at a time. Be honest about everything. It should help you guys through this. Please let me know if you guys need anything and I'll do what I can for you. I'll take good care of the boys.
And she responds, I know you will. You say,
We covered
try
this.
to get some rest. We can
Objection
talk more
asked and
tomorrow about
answered.
the boys. And she says, okay, thanks for not judging us, unlike the whole world. So what
Still
time is this?
irrelevant.
This is now the next day at 12:28 a.m.?
Yes.
All right, and go ahead and read that entire text that so you're texting her into the early hours,
Yes.
correct? Okay, go ahead.
I know you and James and this doesn't even remotely make me think it's your fault. It sounds like Ethan was a troubled kid. It's unfortunate this happened. because he did ruin a lot of lives around him and his own. Everything will work out how it's supposed to. I feel everything happens for a reason. Maybe this happened to raise awareness. Who knows? Try to stay calm and collected as you can.
Awareness of what? This
And
is
then
so
you had an
irrelevant.
amazing right on Billy.
Yes.
Okay, and how does Jennifer respond?
I wish we had warnings, something. He's a good kid that made a terrible decision. I'm glad Billy, good.
Oh, she said, I wish we had warnings, meaning we had no warnings that he was going to shoot up a school.
Okay, did you know what she was talking about?
It's going for speculation.
She was talking about, not having.
Your Honor, I would object to this witness's opinion. The texts speak for themselves.
Calls for
I'm not
speculation.
asking her an opinion, Judge. I'm trying to ask her if there was any.
The topic of the conversation?
Yes.
Did she?
What I'm trying to ask, Judge, is did she have any context for this about warnings?
That's a yes or no question.
Okay. She'd have
Without
to,
saying what
she'd
you
have to have personal knowledge.
right. I was trying to get to that actually. Did you have any information from before she sent you the text about warnings, about what that meant? Not just what you perceived it as, but did you have any information she had provided earlier about warnings?
Just information of, not
You
really
can say
talking
no.
about her child much and that he was troubled.
Okay. So you don't know, other than the worksheet she
It's speculation.
texted you, did you, that day, did she say anything about warnings?
No, she did
Okay.
not.
All right, and you respond,
There probably were warnings, but nobody saw them. Hindsight is always 20/20.
And that's exactly what this whole
absolutely
case is.
okay, and then next.
A lot of people have found out, I guess Ethan is all over Facebook. People at the barn are concerned. I think it would be best if you didn't come out to the barn, or if you do, just, you must be escorted by the police. I'm really sorry. I'm looking out for my business here too.
All right, and what were you testified earlier, you were worried about theft, but what were you worried about? Is there anything else that you were worried about at that point?
I was also
Relevant.
worried about
Objection,
just the
relevance. Who
safety of
cares
other
what she's worried
boarders.
about?
You know, I do have people that I give lessons to that do go to Oxford, and they did not want to be around if Jennifer and James had come to the farm.
Okay, and she responds to you, this is then the next day after the shooting, it's around 9:56 a.m. What does she respond?
Seriously, those horses are the only thing that is good in my life right now. And I respond with, I 100% understand that, but we all need to be careful. What if people follow you here?
Okay, the next messages indicate that it says, Kira missed your call. Is there a way to call through a Facebook Messenger that doesn't include, that's not a cell phone call? Are those two different things if you know?
Yes.
Okay, and had you received Facebook calls from Jennifer before?
She has attempted to call
Okay,
Facebook before.
and you didn't pick up?
I did not.
Is there a reason for that?
I do not remember what I was doing at that time.
Okay, and the next message?
Call me on Facebook, on track phone, need to talk and figure some things out.
And what is your response?
Sorry, I missed your call. I'm still doing some stuff and can't do a phone call until later on.
And then you say, can you message me and
Okay.
communicate that way? Correct?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, next message? She says what?
Let's talk later, easier than texting. This phone is hard to text on.
And now your response is, now this is 3:00, the day after the shooting, you respond what?
All right, no problem. I'll let you know later today.
And then you text her again that night at around 8 p.m.
If you're comfortable coming out here without police, I'm okay with it too. We just need to be careful. I don't want people to follow you or hurt you.
Okay, Kira, it seems as if you're changing your mind here and you're not exactly sure how to handle it. What's going on with that text? Because that's opposite of what you said earlier.
Your Honor, I would object to the
Relevant.
narrative being provided by the prosecution and ask that she just ask questions.
Okay.
Why don't you
well,
object to relevance?
I think she is. She's asking, did you change your mind?
I had changed my mind to allow her to come to the farm, but in my head, if she did decide to come to the farm, I would still have, like, my parents were there and just making sure that things were still safe.
Okay, and were you continuing to talk to other people like your parents during this time about what to do? Or were you pretty set?
I had talked to my parents.
Okay. What is her response shortly after that? That's still 8:12 p.m.
We're out of the area for a few days in a safe place until we have a better grasp on everything.
Okay, and the next message you send?
I am very glad you are safe. I care about you guys. I will take care of your boys. Let me know when you want me to buy them and I'll buy them.
And then you also add, if you need anything else, just let me know.
Yes.
All right. And the next message she sends is about an hour or so later at 9 p.m. And what did she say?
I'm sorry, my keyboard sucks. Let's plan on Monday to sail.
Okay. And at this time, December 1st would be a Wednesday,
Yeah,
if you know.
I think. I'm not good with dates.
Okay. And so Monday is 4 or 5 days later.
Yes.
Okay. And then you respond, okay, sounds good. Is there a way for me to get the medication for his legs before then? Who are you talking about, Billy?
I was talking about Billy because
Okay.
he had the medication that was being used to treat his
The
fever.
mud fever?
Yes.
All right. And then she responds,
What's your number? I want to call and set up a safe place to meet. My messenger is probably being monitored. And
okay, she's telling you at 9:30 on Wednesday night, my messenger is probably being monitored. What did you take that to mean? What messenger?
She is referring to the Facebook Messenger.
So you monitored, meaning that the messages you're sending are being monitored.
Correct.
Did you know who was monitoring them?
I did not.
Okay. And then she says what?
She says, hey, we need to get that stuff to you and discuss the horses.
Okay, so this is the following day at 12:49. She says we need to get that stuff and discuss the horses. And how do you respond?
My response.
Who's Truman?
Truman is our farrier that we use.
You're what?
Our farrier.
Okay, we're Billy and Shorty having a barrier, is it?
Yes.
Okay, and that was arranged by who?
Me, all the horses get done at the same time.
Okay, so you say Truman's here right now, I can let you know when he's done, and you say, I'll message you when I'm done,
Yes.
okay? And then,
Said, hey, I'm sorry, can we do call tomorrow morning?
okay, were you trying to avoid a conversation or you were just busy?
Both.
Okay, fair, all right, and the next message comes in, December 2nd. Yep, can we still sell the horses tomorrow?
Yeah.
And you respond, this is at 10:56 p.m. You respond what?
I think so. Want me to have cash or check?
And how does she respond?
Cash is best.
And you respond what?
What do you want to do with your tag?
And what's tag?
Like the saddles and bridles for the
Okay.
horses.
And she says sell it?
Yes.
Okay, now this is December 3rd at 7:19 a.m., correct?
Yeah.
Is that what it says?
That's, that message on there.
Okay, that's UTC -5, so that is the actual time. That's 7:19 a.m. And that is
Yeah.
December 3rd. And you respond what?
I can probably give you 800 for it all if you want. Are you able to meet today still?
Okay, and that is do you know if that was Friday?
I do not remember.
Okay, no worries. And her response is what?
Her response was maybe. They're announcing charges at 12, so not sure what's happening.
Okay. So that is, if I told you that was a Friday, do you have any reason to disagree with that? December 3rd.
I do not know the actual date that day.
Okay,
so I cannot
so do you know what she's talking about? Charges? Did you have any clue as to what that was about? Yes or no?
say. Yes.
Okay. From Jennifer or from another source?
News.
Okay. And you respond at 11 a.m. shortly, about 45 minutes after. Just let me know and we can figure something out. Do you have the papers for the boys? Is that like ownership papers?
Registration papers, because
Gotcha.
both of the horses are registered.
Thank you, brother.
And then you follow up saying what?
If you will take $5,800 for
Appreciate it.
horses and all the tack and stuff included, I'll go get the money today. So I have it ready when you are ready.
Okay, and she responds, yes, and Brian will contact you. Papers are at my house. Brian's a mutual friend that you both know.
We both know him.
Okay, that's it.
Jennifer's closer
Okay.
to him than I am.
Thank you. And you respond, did you find a place for your other animals? Were you talking about her pets at home?
Yes.
Okay. And she says, not yet. This is at 2 p.m. And then you respond, I can find them.
Everything
with
about
homes
this
with
whole
my
line of
family members
questioning.
If you want, and that's around 2 p.m. as well. Is that the last message you sent or had exchanged with her?
I do not know if that's the last time that I talked to her about this.
Okay, did you give all of the messages on that day, the screenshots to law enforcement that you had?
I did, yes.
Okay. Where are what happened to the horses? Did she end up?
I stole them for a dime.
I did not buy them. They were actually signed over to me, part of our boarding contract is if
Oh, she really did
is
steal them.
not made after a certain number of
Oh, yeah.
days or months, then the
Basically
horses
assume
become
them.
the property of the facility to
There you go. Why
cover
pay $5
the
grand when I
cost
get them for
of
free?
having them boarded.
Okay, and you were making those arrangements with somebody else other than Jennifer?
Jennifer's dad.
Okay, all right. Nothing further at this time. Ross?
Thank you. Good afternoon, or morning, good morning.
It feels like afternoon.
My name is Shannon Smith. I represent Mrs. Crumbley. I believe that I've met you once before when you testified in court at the preliminary exam. Do you recall that?
I do.
If I ask you any questions that are at all confusing, can you please stop me and let me
Oh,
know?
God.
I will.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I want to start off by talking about your
My
relationship
deposition.
with Jennifer Crumbley. You testified today that you had a business relationship with her. Is that correct?
It was a business relationship, but also a friendship, but we were not super close friends.
Okay, so you would agree that at the time prior to November 30th of 2021, Jennifer Crumbley was also a friend to you. Not particularly close, but a friend.
Correct.
Was that helpful?
And the farm that you own, do you call it a farm or a barn?
It's both.
Okay, I keep using the word interchangeably, so I thought I'd
Yep,
ask.
either works.
The property you own is approximately 51 acres, is that correct?
Correct.
And it's fair to say that to get to your property, there are long roads in a very rural area, is that correct?
Yes.
So your farm is not right up against cities or areas with a lot of traffic, correct?
Correct.
On those roads that are close to the farm, it's fair to say the cell signal cuts in and out for different cell phones.
Correct.
Okay.
And you personally, at the time all of this took place, had a phone through Verizon Wireless, correct?
Correct.
And you would be able to use your Verizon phone while at the farm.
For the most part, depending on the area and also just the day.
So there were some parts of the farm or parts of the day where you would also have trouble getting a signal to make phone calls or send text messages, correct?
Correct.
And you know from the other people who board and come to the farm that other people also have internet issues and are unable to receive calls and texts while at the barn.
Yes, sometimes people would struggle with that.
It sounds like there's one little area by a picnic table where people kind of flock if they want to check their texts or get data. Is that correct?
It very well could be. There are a couple areas that seem to maybe be a little bit more reliable service-wise, but even then, like sometimes if it's too windy, things don't work.
Now, you testified that Jennifer Crumbley gave you information that her son was weird, although she talked about vacations and some other things with him. Is that true?
Correct.
And you testified that you had concerns about her son prior to the events that unfolded on November 30th, correct?
I have not voiced to her that I had seen concerns, but in my mind, I had thought that, you know, some of the things that she had described or how she didn't really talk about him much, or if, you know, when she had talked about him, it was very vague. Like people like to talk about their children, and she did not talk about her children.
One moment.
This is so ridiculous.
Whatever's on the screen is not an exhibit, and so
Do I just go ahead and turn this off? It's the button.
Lord.
There's a button for it to go mute.
Should I just pull my plug out?
I don't know, is this yours or?
Yes.
Is this yours?
Yeah, this is my
Oh, okay.
laptop. I didn't realize it was turned on to my laptop, so my desktop was evidently up there. Okay, so.
Too young to be a boomer.
I'm sorry, Ms. Penick, when you, so you've testified obviously here today, but you recall testifying at a preliminary exam that took place back in 2022, correct?
Yes.
And on the day you testified in 2022 at the preliminary exam, you did the same thing we saw here in court. You raised your right hand and swore to tell the truth, correct?
Oh my God.
Correct.
And on that date, you did your best to take the stand and tell the truth about,
Not really
about
take a stand,
your
but yeah.
knowledge of the information in this case.
Correct.
Now, on that date, when you testified, you were specifically asked, have you ever been given reason to believe he was not mentally sound, that he needed professional, medical help? And your answer was no on that occasion, correct?
Correct.
You were also asked, have you ever had reason to believe the shooter was homicidal or he would hurt other people? And your answer was no, correct?
Correct.
Bring it home. Bring it home. Yeah, now you're
today
saying you were
testified
concerned.
that the shooter,
Good.
you were told about issues related to the shooter and him being weird, correct?
Correct.
You testified about that issue at the preliminary exam, and I'm on page 55. And you were asked, when you said that,
Objection, Your Honor, you're on page 55 of what?
the preliminary exam.
So the witness doesn't have that, and I think she doesn't have it.
This is impeachment.
Right, but she's referencing a page number to something that nobody
She's
else.
referencing it for
Yeah,
you.
She's referencing the page number so that you know where she
So
is.
for you,
Right.
not for the
Okay,
witness.
Okay, it's not an exhibit, so I'm just wondering if we're gonna refer to certain things that she said that she be allowed to also see that before she answers.
Well, I think she said, if she doesn't remember.
Then she
if
can
she
say, "I
doesn't
don't remember."
recall,
Yeah.
Right?
Right?
Otherwise, with impeachment, I don't need to put the,
Yeah, so ask her if she recalls being asked a certain question.
okay. At the preliminary exam, you testified about
Do you
whether
remember
James and Jen
testifying?
had issues with their son.
Do you recall that?
I recall.
And on that date, you said, I had never gotten the feeling that Jen and James had those types of issues with their son, correct?
Correct. I did
And-
not know if there were specific issues, as they had never told me flat out that there were issues, but just some of their behaviors that they or comments that they had made, indirect comments, made me think that there.
So you were
may have been issues
speculating
at
about
some
all
point.
that.
So it's your testimony today that you thought there may have been issues, but when you were asked under oath and testified in 2022, you specifically said
So you were
I
lying
had
to the
never
jury
gotten
today
the
when you said you
feeling
heard it?
that Jen and James had those types of issues with their son.
I did not know. I don't have any
But you
paper
testified as
proof
if you did know
or
this morning.
documentations of conversations to know for sure, so they're just my feelings.
Your
Okay,
feelings aren't crap.
I'm not asking you if you have documentations or proof. I am just saying that on that date in 2022, which was closer in time to the events in
You didn't
this
say it was your
case,
feelings when you were testifying
your
20 minutes ago.
testimony, sworn testimony, was that James and Jen did not have those issues with their son, correct?
Correct.
You need to call her out for lying to the jury this morning. That's where you,
Now,
counselor, come
when
on.
the math drawing was
Oh God, step
sent
it up,
over to
counselor.
you by Mrs. Crumbley. The math paper her son wrote on, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
God, that's
Okay.
painful, miss.
You ultimately saw that math paper. And you would agree with me that Jennifer appeared very concerned about what was going on, correct?
She had stated that she was concerned.
Okay, so she sends you the math paper and expresses concern.
Yes.
Now, you testified that when you heard there was a shooting at Oxford High School, you knew who the shooter was, correct?
My feeling with the information that I was given before I had actually seen it on the news and who the shooter actually was, I had my feelings about who the shooter was.
So you did not believe that the shooter would have committed a school shooting based on the math paper alone, correct?
I do not know for sure.
If you saw that math paper and thought there would be a school shooting, you would have told someone, correct?
I cannot predict the future that there would have been a shooting.
Oh, but these parents are
I
being liable for
was
not
very
predicting the
concerned
future.
about the sheet, the math test that was sent to me.
That's exactly the point.
And I did talk to my parents about the math test that I was shown, and my understanding is that with Jennifer and James meeting with the school, that this was discussed.
Okay, we can agree that after the meeting about the math paper, Jennifer was concerned, we already went through that, yes?
Yes,
We can agree that she sent you a picture of the math paper
I
and
concur
you also felt
entirely,
concerned,
Kelly.
correct?
correct.
And we can agree that you did not call law
Very
enforcement
weak.
or police to say, hey, I think a school shooting is going to unfold, correct?
Correct.
At the time you saw the math paper and were concerned, You would have stopped the school shooting if
Bad
you
question.
predicted it was
Don't say
going
you
to
would
happen,
have.
correct?
Bad
I
question.
would not have known that something like this would have happened.
You wouldn't
There are
have
better ways to
thought
ask the same
something like
question.
this would happen, correct?
Correct.
You didn't.
What
Right.
ended up happening was horrible, correct?
Correct.
And it was not anything that you expected even, correct?
Correct.
Finally, we sort of got there.
So when you are telling the jury that you hear about the shooting and you're thinking about the math paper, you know it's at Oxford High
After
School.
the fact, you
Your
put two and
testimony
two together.
was you had an idea of who the shooter was, correct?
Correct.
In order to reach that conclusion at that time, you had to rely on hindsight, looking backwards at things that you believed supported Jennifer's son may be the shooter, correct?
Yes, the only thing
Stop,
that
stop,
I,
Yes,
the thing that made
non-responsive.
me
Yes,
believe
it's
that
fine.
I knew who the shooter was realizing the math test that was sent to me that morning.
So stop her.
So
Right.
after the
Just
shooting
stop her.
happened, I had a feeling of who the shooter was because of the math test that was sent to me that morning.
Okay, so it's looking backwards, connecting the dots of
You
things
stop
you
her. Reel
see
her in.
that were of
She's your witness
concern,
now.
and knowing the shooting happened, that helps you put it together who the shooter is.
Correct.
This is a rookie.
But again,
defense
if you
counsel.
saw that math paper and had known or had a crystal ball and knew the shooting was gonna unfold, you would have certainly called police or done something to stop it.
Absolutely.
But you didn't.
also would have
Correct.
said to Mrs. Crumbley, hey, I think your son is gonna do something to hurt people, correct?
Correct.
Or, hey, I think your son might do something to hurt himself.
Correct.
And it's fair to say that you did not send Mrs. Crumbley messages along those lines.
Correct.
Good. Good. She finally got there. She got the key points out. Not many points on style, but she got where she needs to go.
You testified that you were being kind to Mrs. Crumbley. I don't believe you used the word being kind, but I characterize it as kind. When you said to her, I'm so sorry, you have to deal with this, text messages along those lines that have been admitted,
You can
correct?
put that question up and saying you were
Correct.
trying to be kind.
And you are aware that Mrs. Crumbley from the text messages was saying she can't go home,
Correct.
and you were expressing concern for her in response to her saying, I can't go home.
Correct.
We can agree there was a strong public opinion against the Crumbleys that you were aware of.
Correct.
Many people were very angry with the Crumbley parents when they knew the Crumbley parents were the parents of the shooter.
Correct.
So one of Mrs. Crumbley's concerns that was discussed in these texts with you were for her safety and the safety of her husband.
Correct.
And that poured over onto you as well. As the barn owner, you needed to be concerned about your affiliation with the Crumbleys.
With public enemy number one.
Correct.
And you needed to be concerned to make sure that you were not specifically harmed by anyone for being affiliated with them, correct?
I wanted to make sure that myself, my family, and my barn family were also safe.
Well, that was gonna be my next question. You were concerned about yourself, and I'm sorry, you said your family?
My close family, and then also what we call a barn family, or people that are boarded at my facility.
Thank you. And that's why you made indications to Mrs. Crumbley about not coming to the barn or only coming with a police escort, because you were watching out for what you needed to protect, which is yourself, the people you care about, and your boarders.
Correct.
When you write to Mrs. Crumbley in the texts that were admitted, please stay safe.
And away from me.
You genuinely wanted Mrs. Crumbley to stay safe.
Correct.
And Mrs. Crumbley was explaining that she can't go home. Those texts speak for themselves.
Correct.
And Mrs. Crumbley ultimately says that they are staying out of town for a few days.
Correct.
And it's your understanding they were not returning back to their home address.
Correct.
In the text, you say to Mrs. Crumbley, you give her some advice to be honest about everything, correct?
Correct.
At no point, there is no point where Mrs. Crumbley says to you, hey, I'm gonna lie about this, correct?
Correct.
There's no point where she says, Kara, please take my side and lie about anything, correct?
Correct.
When you're giving her the advice to tell the truth, she's not saying to you, I'm not planning to do that, right?
Correct.
And in your texts, you confirm to Mrs. Crumbley that you don't remotely think it's Jen and James' fault that the shooter did this, correct?
I did put that in the text message, correct.
And then Mrs. Crumbley responds that she wishes there had been warnings, correct?
Correct.
And when you text her back, you say there probably were, but nobody saw them, right?
I did have that in my message, correct.
And if you had seen warnings that the shooter would do something like he did, you certainly would have voiced that to Mrs. Crumbley.
Your Honor, I believe she's been asked that question a couple of times.
No,
Well,
she hasn't.
I think she asked if you saw that picture in People's 74. Would you have called the police and said there's a mass shooting? There's going to be a mass shooting. So
But that's different about
I think the
warnings.
question's somewhat different.
Yeah.
I believe she also asked her if you would have said something to Mrs. Crumbley, I'm concerned.
Did she ask you?
Oh my gosh.
Yes,
This
a
is stupid.
variation.
I did ask that, but then further down in the text messages, the conversation
Not general
shifts,
warnings.
and the conversation is specifically, again, about signs and warnings. And so that's why I'm asking this witness a question about it again,
Okay.
only because it reappears.
Okay, go ahead.
And because they
Okay.
spent an hour
So
going through what happened
You never
afterwards.
said to Jennifer Crumbley, when you two were discussing the word warnings, hey, I think there were warnings, correct?
Can
Yes
you
or no?
rephrase that?
You did not say to Mrs. Crumbley, when you guys were talking about her wishing there were warnings, you didn't say, Jennifer, there were warnings.
That is correct, because
That's just my question. You
Okay.
did not say,
Good, finally, trying
Jennifer,
to
there
reel her
were
in.
warnings.
correct.
And in fact, you continued to go on to be kind to Mrs. Crumbley and continue working out the terms of
I
buying
was
this
trying to
horse,
steal her
correct?
horses though.
Correct.
And you continued to be concerned and telling Mrs. Crumbley, stay where you are, and that you didn't want people hurting them, correct?
Correct.
When Mrs. Crumbley was commenting to you about a lawyer costing $200,000, you understood she was trying to gather money together to pay a lawyer, retain a lawyer.
Correct.
And at that point, the shooting by the shooter had taken place, correct?
Correct.
And you do not know who the lawyer was for that Mrs. Crumbley was going to be thinking about paying $200,000 to, correct?
I did not know for sure.
May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Sure.
Thank you.
So
Okay. Ms. Penick, in light of your testimony, I just want to confirm, you have never suspected that Jennifer Crumbley has stolen anything from you, correct?
No.
You've never filed a police report or made that kind of claim to Mrs. Crumbley or anyone, correct?
No.
Thank you.
Redirect.
All right.
Did you have any trouble receiving and sending Facebook messages that day when you, in the thread that I had you read?
I do not remember.
Okay, but you successfully communicated with her?
Correct.
Okay. Council asked you a couple times about text messages you sent Jennifer and you wanted to explain. You said, that's what I wrote in the text. And you, what do you mean when you say that?
A lot of the messages that I had sent, I wanted to send them in a way that I could possibly gain more information to provide to the law and get this situation taken care of.
Okay, did you have any other concerns about being in a confrontation or a fight?
Not directly with them.
Okay, and she just asked you about concerns about theft, and you said, no, you didn't prior to this, so why were you concerned about it now?
I was concerned because when somebody needs a lot of money and they're in a tight spot with something like this case, that they may do things that they may not have ever thought about doing. And one of those things was stealing things to sell for money to cover the expenses of things that might need to be covered.
Okay, nothing further, Your Honor. If she be excused.
You can step down.
So defense did a decent job of getting there. Ultimately got out the facts that she needed to get. That before the shooting took place, even this witness didn't think that a shooting was happening. And that was the key thing she wanted.
Are you guys good? We waited a long time this morning. Can we call another witness and then I think your lunch will be here at 12-ish. We'll start another witness. Is that okay? Okay.
So her style is, she's obviously relatively new to criminal defense. She struggles to get where she wants to go and doesn't reel in the witness enough. But she got out the key facts she needed to get out, which is you saw the same thing that Jennifer saw. And you didn't think he's about to shoot up a school. And part of what the prosecution has to establish is that this was foreseeable and grossly negligent because this was so foreseeable. So that was effective in getting the job done, even if her style was a little bit green. I just want to cover a few things here. It's an interesting thing to say double jeopardy because the child was charged as an adult. Now the parents are being charged as if it's a child who did it and that they're responsible for the actions of the child. It's not really called double jeopardy, but I understand what you're saying. It's sort of two bites at the apple by the state. And it is frustrating that they treat the kid, the shooter, as an adult. And then are saying, well, you're responsible for the actions of this adult as if you're the one who caused it. So I concur with you in the general perspective, even though it really is not considered double jeopardy, but I can understand why it does seem like there's two bites at the apple, but it's not double jeopardy, obviously, because it's two different defendants. If the school admin feels safe for them to be there, shouldn't they also be charged? Feels weird that they can use it against her, but not themselves. What am I missing? Well, okay, so the key factor that would insulate the school in theory, if you accept this entire premise, which I find to be, I struggle with accepting this premise. But a key distinction that the state would point out is the school has no knowledge about his ownership of a gun, access to a gun, or anything of that. And these parents not only had knowledge, but helped grant that access. Now, the Michigan Supreme Court expressed concerns that this seems to be ridiculously punitive of parents who believe in our Second Amendment rights, which seems wrong. That you're all of a sudden now, because when in fact we know that a lot of kids may get therapy from learning the responsibility of handling a gun. That's not bad for them. It's not dangerous. It's considered how you help them. So, but that is a distinction. I mean, whether that should be a distinction or not, that probably depends
No,
on your position on the Second Amendment.
Mr. Hopkins is.
But that definitely is a distinguishing factor between the parents and the school. that the parents at least have knowledge of the existence of this weapon that could be used either for self-harm or harming others. I don't think that that justifies bringing any charges against them personally, but that's my personal take on it. That's not going to, there are other people who would disagree with me on that. So, and Kevin, you're correct. The murder in Murdoch, which is the South Carolina case where he was convicted of murdering his wife and son, which is a trial I covered. There's a rehearing going on about whether or not there was taint of the jury. I plan on covering that tonight. I plan on streaming that. I've been actually monitoring it in the background. It's been going back and forth, and I plan on, there's an evidentiary hearing that's going on, which I think is very important and very interesting. So I plan on covering that as well, just in my efforts to basically work myself to exhaustion, and because I think it's interesting. So. But that's going to be, I'm going to urge you, you can find me on goodlogic.locals.com, and I'll keep you apprised as to when I plan on covering that. But I definitely plan on covering it.
Mr. Hopkins, could you raise your right hand?
I agree with you.
Swear or affirm the testimony about to give is the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Okay, please be seated. And then would you state your name for the record and spell your first and last name?
Sean Hopkins, SHAWN. Last name HOPKINS.
May I judge?
I think he's the school counselor, this guy.
Sir, did you work with the Oxford High School in November of 2021?
I did.
Okay. And what did you do there?
I was a counselor at the high school.
Do you still work with Oxford School District?
I am currently on leave through the end of the school year.
Yeah, this guy should be on trial.
So you said you were a counselor. What exactly does that mean?
As a counselor, I oversaw my caseload of students. I had approximately 400 students while at Oxford High School. I helped them with post-secondary planning, scheduling. I helped them also with social emotional issues and really kind of working with them holistically throughout their time at school.
Okay, so you said you had about 400 students on your caseload, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, so how many students, if you know, attended Oxford High School in November of 2021?
I believe it was around either 1750, 1800.
Okay, so how many counselors were there?
There were 4 counselors with main caseloads, and then we had a counselor who had early college students.
Okay, so the 4, you call them main counselors, would they have a similar type of caseload?
Yeah, we were divided out alphabetically, so
So
we
the
each
4
took about an equal amount of students.
So you described a few different duties. Did you have any primary responsibilities as a counselor, or did you sort of have a lot of different responsibilities?
I would call it a lot of different responsibilities that were all primary. I don't know that there was one that we would put above the other that I described.
So in your general caseload, did you have regular meetings with students, or was it as an as-needed basis?
Both, actually. We did have a couple meetings per year that were scheduled, especially with seniors. We would meet with them regularly, and then we would meet once per year to go over scheduling and making sure that students were getting everything they needed for graduation, and then at an as-needed basis for any students.
Okay. So tell me about your background, please.
Well, I graduated from college in 2009, actually started as a youth pastor, worked in that role for from 2009 to 2018. I actually crossed over some with my time in the schools. I graduated with a master's in counseling from Oakland University in 2015, served the 2014-2015 school year as an intern at Oxford High School, and then was hired on full-time after that.
Okay, is that where you had been employed up until, from that point up until the time you went on leave?
No, I was at Oxford Bridges High School for the 2022-23 school year.
Okay, what is that?
That's the alternative high school within the Oxford Schools District for students who are credit deficient and at risk for graduation because of their credits.
Okay, thank you. So did any of your responsibilities as a counselor at the high school involve disciplining students?
They did not.
Okay, so who would handle that?
That would have been the dean or principals.
So November of 2021, Oxford High School, at that point, were students still masked?
They were.
Okay. Was it in-person learning, or was it hybrid, or was it remote?
It was primarily in person. We did have times when we were unable to stay in person due to amount of students out with COVID tracing.
Okay, so it was in person whenever possible. That'd be correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what sort of issues would arise with the students in your caseload in the fall of 2021?
It was a difficult time. Looking back on it, it was a time when, you know, it was a lot unknown for students, especially if they would be quarantined at times. You were working with them, making sure they were able to stay caught up. We actually had teachers filming their class as they were teaching their class, oftentimes, to make sure that they were able to keep students engaged even when they were out. So it was difficult from a scholastic standpoint, which in a lot of ways led to it becoming difficult from an emotional standpoint for students, where it just became, the unknown can be difficult sometimes.
What sort of mental health struggles would you see around that time?
We saw a lot of depression, anxiety, students struggling, and we saw suicide ideation and unfortunately suicide attempts during that time.
Tell us, please, what exactly does suicide ideation mean?
It's a difficult one to define for a lot of people, but really what suicide ideation is are themes or things which may be related to suicide. So we could see sadness, which in itself isn't suicidal, or we could see depression, which in itself isn't suicidal. But when we see these themes together, sometimes they can be linked with suicide.
Okay. In November of 2021, as well as the previous school year, was Jennifer Crumbley's son one of the students assigned to your caseload?
He was.
Okay. When would have been the first time you interacted with Jennifer Crumbley's son?
To my memory, the first time would have been in the fall of the 2021 school year.
Okay, so what purpose would you have interacted with him then? You would have been a freshman at the high school?
Well, I do know that there have been.
Come on. Come on. Come on.
We would have done scheduling, we would have done just normal routine things, but I don't have a memory of that.
So when you say scheduling, you mean scheduling classes?
Yeah,
Okay, so that was one of your responsibilities as well?
it was.
Okay. Now, first of all, is Jennifer Crumbley in the courtroom today?
Yes, she is.
Can you point here and describe something she's wearing today, please?
She is to my right, wearing a black jacket.
Get her on the glasses. Get her on the glasses. She's wearing glasses.
Card identification of the defendant, Jennifer Crumbley.
So in the defendant's son's freshman year, that's the fall of 2020 into early parts of 21, do you have any recollection of interacting with him?
I don't.
Okay. Now, did you interact with him in the, if I showed you an email, would it refresh your recollection if you met with him in the spring of 2021?
I have seen this email. I don't have memory of the meeting, but it's been documented.
Okay. This is exhibits, I don't believe we have an objection to exhibits 155 through 160.
I'm sorry, let me just double check here. That's correct, 155 through 165.
A lot of people are saying this.
No.
A lot of people are saying this.
160 are admitted.
I
I'm
don't.
going to direct you to the screen right in front of
It
me.
definitely
This
looks
is exhibit
unsettling.
155, portions obviously are redacted. This is a copy of an email, is that correct?
It is.
Okay, it's sent from a staff member of Oxford High School?
Mhm.
You have to say yes or no.
Yes,
Okay, and can you tell us, please, it was addressed to you May 13, 2021, 1:46 p.m.?
that is correct.
And what does the email say?
Hi, when you get a chance, can you call redacted down and see how he's doing? He's failing my class and tries to sleep all the time in class.
Okay, so this was in reference to the defendant's son.
That is correct.
This is a portion of the same email thread, also May 13, 2021. This is 2:07 p.m. And what was your response?
Says, I'll catch him before the end of the day.
And then did that staff member respond to you?
Yes,
And what was that?
thanks. Just a little worried.
Now, do you recall having a conversation with the defendant's son in May of 2021?
I do not recall this meeting.
I'm going to show you what's been admitted as People's 156.
Mhm.
This is, remember, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. September the 8th, 2021, 8:23 a.m. This is an email from a different teacher to you. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And could you read us, please, what the email says?
Hi, Sean. Could you please touch base with student? In his autobiography poem, he said he feels terrible and that his family is a mistake. Unusual responses for sure.
Okay. Did you respond to that email?
I believe I did.
Okay, so this is your response, September the 8th, 2021, 9:15 a.m. What is your response?
Thanks for the heads up. I'm in senior meetings throughout the day, but we'll try and catch up with him.
Now, do you recall that interaction with the defendant's son?
In this case, I did not have a direct interaction with the defendant's son. I talked with the teacher.
Okay, and tell us about that, please.
I had a conversation with the teacher and she explained to me a little bit more context of what had gone on. She explained that he was
Your
joking.
Honor, I would object to the hearsay.
It's not offered for the truth of the matter, sir. The judge just offered what he did next and what.
Okay, so what did you do next?
So I had a conversation with the teacher who gave me greater context of what was going on within this. And she stated that he was
Your
actually,
Honor, I would object
I
to.
don't think it was clear to him.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Based on your conversation with the teacher, what did you do next?
Did you,
I did not
Hearsay.
have a
No.
meeting. I did not have a meeting with the student
Okay.
at this time.
and did you send an email to either the defendant or her husband, or a phone call to either the defendant or her husband?
I did not.
Okay, that's all.
The technical term is bottom.
Now, in Oxford High School, are grades posted so parents can follow along?
They are.
Okay, and what system is that?
That is through a system called Power School.
Okay,
They are given live updates through that system.
and that's every parent of every student registered in Oxford School District that can follow along with assignments and things of that nature.
Yes,
And our parents also provided emailed updates to Power School.
I believe that they can get notifications through the Power School system.
And that's sent to email?
I'm not sure.
If you,
how
if
that
you,
is.
if you know, that's all right. All right. Now, this was September the 8th, 2021.
Low biter.
I'm going to show you People's Exhibit 157. Now, this is November the 10th, 2021 at 2:45 p.m. This is an email to you. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And can you tell us what this says, please?
Student is having a rough time right now. He might need to speak with you.
And then your response at 4:44 p.m. on November the 10th, 2021 was what?
I'm sorry, I was in a meeting through the end of the day. I'll catch up with him.
Okay. And did you catch up with him?
I did the following day.
Okay. Tell us about that, please.
I had a quick meeting in the hallway on his way to class and just let him know that if he needed somebody to talk to, that I could be there for him.
Okay. Now, did you contact either that student's mother or father at that point?
I did not.
Okay. Did you send an email? No. And why not?
Because it was something that was very typical. I didn't have any information on the student other than he was sad, which to me is a pretty common thing and a normal thing. And I just wanted to be able to offer a bridge that if that student wanted to talk.
Okay. And you offered that bridge to the student?
I did meet with that student in the hallway and offered that opportunity.
Okay. And for the record, that was Jennifer Crumbley's son. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, the next time you had any interaction with the defendant's son was November the 29th, 2021. Would that be right?
Yes.
This is Exhibit 158. Sir, this is an email to you that eventually was forwarded. Is that correct?
This email was eventually forwarded to me fairly quickly after it was sent to the two on this email.
Okay, so this is Monday, November 29th, 9:32 a.m. Can you read us, please, what the email says?
I have a student during first hour today, defendant's son, who is on his phone looking at different bullets at the end of first hour today as I was walking around the room passing out their essays. I didn't get a chance to investigate it a bit further since it was the end of the hour. Now that he's on my radar, I'm also noticing some of his previous work that he's completed from earlier in the year leans a bit toward the violent side. I can bring these things later today during my 5th hour prep if you would like them.
Okay, so
This
was
is the day before the
9:32 a.m.
shooting.
You weren't on the initial email, but it was forwarded to you.
It was forwarded to me.
Okay, and tell us what happened next.
And what did you do with that?
At this point, I received a phone call from Pam Fine, who was on the original email, asking if I would be able to come to her office. She was planning to call down the student and meet to discuss the contents of this email.
Now, in the realm of either a school counselor or someone who's in discipline of students, there's certain levels of escalation when it comes to contacting a student and or a parent. Would that be right?
I would agree with that, yes.
Okay. So there's a check-in.
Your Honor, I would ask that the witness answer the questions and avoid the leading questions.
Please.
I would just say objection leading.
Okay, so earlier you testified that you had just met with the student's teacher in September of 2021.
Yes,
Okay, and you felt that was sufficient at that point.
yes, because I was able to gain more context.
Okay. November the 10th of 2000, well, actually, you met with him November the 11th, 2021. You took the next step to meet with him.
Yes,
Okay. And now a decision was made, you just testified that to actually bring the student into the office.
that decision was made. I was not the one who made that decision.
Sure. But as far as you're concerned in your role, what are the levels of escalation to contact either a
You're
parent or
welcome.
somebody else?
I can't make a prediction. I have no idea what the jury is thinking. They could think
It
that
depends on the situation. If
blame
it's
the
a
parent.
discipline
No,
issue, I'd be contacting a dean or a principal. And then they would be the ones leading the meeting from there. If it's a social emotional issue, or if I feel the student is at risk of harm to themselves, I would be contacting a parent in that case.
Okay. So you said it was Pam Fine who was on that initial email, and what was her role at Oxford High School?
She was a restorative practices coordinator at that time.
So tell me what happened after you received that phone call.
I walked to Pam Fine's office, and the student had been called down and then walked into her office.
Okay, the student being the defendant's son?
Yes,
Okay, tell us about that meeting.
it was fairly brief. I was there as student support throughout the meeting, not to have direct conversation about the content of the meeting. But it was really a chance to get an idea of what he was looking at and why.
Okay, when you said you were there for the standpoint of student support, what does that mean?
Well, when a student is facing a potential discipline issue, it's fairly common to call a counselor in, as we are not the ones issuing the discipline in that case, but we can be a person there who's in the corner for the student.
So is that intentional to keep the discipline separate from the counselor?
Yes,
Why is that?
because the counselor is not a role of disciplinarian, the counselor is a role of student support.
So your focus then would be on the mental health and well-being of the student, not if the school rule was violated.
That is correct.
But you said the meeting was fairly short.
Who was supposed
It
to be
was
school
less
rules were
than 10
violated?
minutes.
Was a decision made to take the next step to contact the parent?
There was a phone call to the parent after the meeting.
Okay, now, do you know how that decision was made and why?
I do not know how that decision was made or why.
Okay. Were you there
Yes.
for that phone call?
I was.
It's gonna be on Wednesday.
It was a voicemail?
It was a voicemail.
Okay, and who made it? You were Miss Fine.
Ms. Fine is the one who made the phone call.
Now, when was the next time you had any interaction? Well, first we'll go through the rest of 158 here. It'll be on your screen. This is when it was forwarded, the email forwarded to you at 9:34. Can you read this email, please?
I sent the following email to Nick and Pam. I wanted to make you aware as well. I'm not sure if you had any contact with this student.
Okay, now who's Nick?
Nick was a dean of students at Oxford High School at the time.
Okay. And 9:36 a.m., you responded to the email. What did you write?
Thanks, Jacqueline. I'll be touching base with him as well.
Okay, thank you. Now, when is the next time that you had contact with the defendant's son?
It would have been the following morning of November 30th.
Okay. I'm
That's
going
the day of the
to
shooting.
show you what's already been admitted as 1:59. This is also an email. This is Tuesday, November 30th, 2021 at 8:05 a.m. And you were on this initial email, correct?
Yes.
Okay, did you tell us what the email says, please?
I know Jackie emailed you guys yesterday with some concerns about the student in our first hour class. Today, he is watching videos on his phone of a guy gunning down people. It looks like it's a movie scene and not security footage / a real event, but definitely still concerning when taking into account some of his other behaviors.
Okay, so this email was sent at 8:05 a.m. the morning of the shooting. What time did you receive it?
Well, I received it at 8:05. I believe I responded and saw it about 30 minutes later,
I'm sorry, that was a bad question. What, if you recall, what time did you actually read it?
around 8:30.
What was your reaction when you read the email?
My first reaction was, here we go again, of another conversation of you have to follow school rules. You have to be able to.
They would be spot on.
To
That's what it would be.
make decisions that aren't going to be detrimental to your time in class.
Now, did you receive, subsequently you met with that student, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, but before you did you receive another email regarding him?
Not to my
Objection
knowledge.
leading.
no.
Okay, well, did you receive another email regarding the defendant's son that day?
Objection leading.
I did, but it was, what happened was a math teacher showed a picture to our dean of students, Nikki.
Okay, so I'm gonna show you 160, what's been admitted.
Okay.
This is,
Those of you not seen
from a
this
teacher
picture, I'm going to
you
share it
and
with
Mr.
you.
Ejak, who references the dean of students.
Yes.
This was sent 9:32 a.m. And this
This
was
is the picture.
Photograph
Why is this white now?
of a drawing by the defendant's son.
This is
Yes,
the drawing
this
that,
was sent
that he made.
After I already had defendant's son in my office.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit then. You looked at the first email around 8:30 in the morning, you said?
Yes.
Okay, and then what decision did you make and why?
I was on the phone when I saw the email, and upon hanging up the phone, I actually had Mr. Ejak come to my office.
Why is that?
Because he had been shown the math assignment, which is attached in the email currently on the screen.
Okay, and then tell me about that conversation.
He mentioned that Ms. Morgan had shown him this picture. I said, Ethan, because I had his schedule up on my computer going to planning on talking with him.
Okay,
And then I made the decision as the counselor to go into his class because it is, when a counselor goes into a class, it could be for anything.
okay. And you said you had made the decision to speak with him. Was that because of the email you received before Mr. Ejak came and saw you, or for another reason?
It was based on the email that I received.
Okay,
And then when I already had the information that there was an assignment of some sort going on, then it solidified that decision even further that I was going to talk to the student.
okay. Did Mr. Ejak show that to you, or did you see it from the email?
I did not see it until I saw the assignment in person in the class.
In person?
He was shown a picture of it on the phone.
Who's he?
Mr. Ejak
Okay,
was shown a picture of it on a cell phone.
all right,
So I had not seen the assignment at that point.
all right. And you made the decision to retrieve the defendant's son from class and bring him to your office.
Yes, his classroom was actually close to my office when he was in that hour.
Okay,
And so I made the decision that as a counselor, it would be easier for me to walk in there because that's a pretty common thing. And then I ended up grabbing the assignment and walking back to my office with the student.
okay. Now the first time you saw that assignment was in person in that classroom. That's correct?
I really didn't look at it much. I had it,
Okay,
but I wasn't studying it as we were walking back to my office.
okay. This is exhibit 123. It's already been admitted. Now there's things drawn out in words added and certain words crossed out. Was this the assignment that you retrieved from the defendant's son's classroom?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And then you brought the defendant's son back to your office. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then when would you say is the first time that you really took a look at this?
A couple minutes after being back into my office was when I really took a look at it.
Okay.
I went through the email I received with him
With
from
who? The
Allison
defendant's son?
Yes,
Okay.
the email from Allison Karpinski, and then sought clarification on that email. And then after receiving the clarification from the student on that email, I then looked over the paper with the defendant's son.
Okay, and what was your thought when you saw this paper, Exhibit 123?
My first thought was I wanted to get from.
You think if he was paid
him
more, he
what
would care
was-
more?
what
That
he
would make him
was
care
doing.
if he had a higher
His initial
salary?
response was that it was a video game,
Because
that he
I
liked
find that difficult to
drawing
believe.
for video games and liked being able to create in that way. So I let him describe it in that way at first, and then I asked him to talk about some of the words that he had written down.
Okay, by this
because
point,
those stuck out to me.
so by this point, have you seen the original drawing?
No,
Okay, so the words you were asking to explain were on this sheet here, 123.
that is correct.
Okay, so what words in particular stood out to you?
I noticed the words of "I love my life so much," "the thoughts won't stop." I could make out "help me" under the crossed out part, and "harmless act." So it made me concerned
second-
that the student may potentially
This is a second
be
picture.
suicidal or be displaying suicidal ideation.
Okay, so I take it you didn't take the defendant's son explanation at face value.
I didn't take it at face value.
This was a
accounted
follow-up.
for it as his description, but I wanted to make sure that I was looking at as much of a picture as I could.
Okay, so when you reviewed this drawing, and again, this is before you saw the original drawing, did you decide then to ask more pointed questions?
I did. I really wanted to point out the words that were in the drawing because they were the easiest to see, and I wanted to get explanation for the words that wasn't just "it's a video game."
Now, when you were speaking with the defendant son in your office, did he have a mask on?
He did.
Okay, did you have a
That was
mask?
modifications he made.
Could you tell what his demeanor was at that point?
As best as you could, without complete facial expression. You still have tone of voice, you still have pace of speech.
At this point, you never actually interacted with him without a mask, would that be right?
That is correct.
So when you ask more pointed questions, tell us what happened next and why.
His demeanor at first was very compliant. And as I started asking about the words and asking him to describe the words, his demeanor shifted towards more of a sad demeanor.
Okay.
He started
here's the-
sharing some things that had gone on.
Here's the
in his
modified.
life.
Like what?
He mentioned that a family dog had died recently. He mentioned that a grandparent had passed, that he was struggling with COVID and with school through COVID. And he mentioned that he had an argument with his parents about grades the night before.
Did he tell you that a friend of his had abruptly left the state?
He did mention that.
What
a
is
friend of his had
OHS?
left.
Oh, that's Oxford
He
High
didn't say
School.
the state, just wasn't attending school anymore.
Okay. Now, did you make a decision based upon your conversation with him to call Jennifer Crumbley?
I did.
Okay. Now, is that before or after you saw the original drawing?
I don't remember.
Okay. So during this conversation with the defendant's son, did you have the opportunity to look at the original drawing?
I did receive the original drawing in an email, probably 25 to 30 minutes after retrieving him from class.
So this is Exhibit 74. It's already been admitted. This is the original drawing that was shared with you?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what about this drawing causes you concern as well?
This drawing also gave me a lot of concerns of suicide.
That's what they all
When I
thought.
looked at it and I saw one body. When I looked at it and saw words that were internalized of "the thoughts won't stop, help me," I started becoming concerned about the student's well-being and made the decision that I needed to involve parents.
Okay.
So shooting
So,
others was not
we had talked
foreseeable.
about checking
That's
with
what
the
the-
teacher,
that's what defense has
checking
to
with
hit
the
on.
Student, calling the student in to the office, then a phone call to the parent. Now you decided to not just call the parent, but also call them in.
I did.
Okay. Now in the range of options with the counselor dealing with a parent, this is be the highest option. Would that be right?
This would definitely be up there, yes.
Okay. So when was that decision made? How long, let me ask you this, how long were you with the defendant's son before you made that decision to call his mother?
To the best of my memory, at least 20 minutes.
Okay, so in that 20-minute time span though, you made the decision to bring her in.
I did.
Okay. Tell us how that happened.
I asked, I actually told the student what I was going to do. I said, here's where we're at, and here's what I have to do. And I let him know that in this case, I need to call your parents and get them involved because I want to make sure we get you help and support. I then
Great
gave
point,
student
Tam.
the option
Great point.
to choose which parent he wanted me to call. I do that quite frequently because it gives you an insight
I can't make it
into the
make
student
sense.
a little bit. Of sometimes they might say, please don't call this parent. And student's response was it would be easier to get a hold of mom. So we called mom.
Okay. Now, did you tell him that you had concerns of suicidal ideation before you called Jennifer Crumbley?
I do not believe that I told him that, no.
And you indicated that you had seen in the fall of 2021 other aspects of suicidal ideation of other students?
Yes,
Okay. And you said even some students had even attempted suicide?
sadly, yes.
Okay. So you've had these sort of meetings where you call a parent in before?
I have.
Okay. And you said it was the defendant's son to call Jennifer Crumbley, or at least you'd have an easier time getting a hold of her?
Yeah, that was the statement. So I called mom, and I
Mom
believe,
being the defendant, Jennifer Crumbley?
yes, that is
Okay.
correct. And she was unable to answer that phone call. So I then asked,
Well, how do you know that? It went to voicemail?
yes,
Okay.
she did not answer
She
that
did not
phone
answer.
call.
Okay.
And so I asked the student if it was okay for me to call his dad, and he said yes. I called dad, and it sounded like there was an answer, but it was also kind of like just dead air on the phone.
Okay.
And
So
the
I
beep was
hung up,
weird.
and a few moments later, I received a phone call back from Jennifer Crumbley.
Okay. Now, if I told you that we had phone logs admitted into evidence that showed you left a message for Jennifer Crumbley at 9:24 a.m., would that sound right to you?
That sounds about right, yes.
Okay. And then it appeared from those same records that she had called you back at 9:27 a.m. Does that also sound right?
That sounds about right.
Okay. Tell us about that conversation between you and Jennifer Crumbley at 9:27 a.m.
I let her know that I had the student in my office and I had some concerns and was hoping that she would be able to come into the school.
Was that on your office line?
It was on my office line, yes.
Did you have the telephone to your ear, or was it speakerphone?
At that point, it was to my ear. And I believe that mom asked to speak with Ethan, or the student. So I then put it on speakerphone and allowed them to talk to each other as well.
Okay, tell me about that, please.
Mom asked the student what was going on. And he didn't really have much, just kind of.
Okay. Did you tell the defendant that you had a drawing you were going to send her, the math worksheet?
I believe I did, yes.
Okay.
And then I sent it to her,
Okay.
to her cell phone.
And did she comment on that drawing, that math worksheet to you while she was on the phone with you?
Not to my memory.
You indicated to Jennifer Crumbley that you needed her to come into the office. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Did she say, okay, I'll be right there? Or did she say something else?
She was hoping that
This is
dad
an
would be able
interesting
to do it,
comment
that it would be
that I'm gonna
difficult for
address
her
later.
to get there, to leave work, and that she worked approximately 30 minutes.
This could be something he was
from
directed
school.
by the DA to say.
And that was 9:27 a.m. And when she told you that it'd be difficult for her to come there, was that on speakerphone?
I do not remember.
Okay. So what was from the records, it shows about a 5-minute phone call between you and Jennifer Crumbley at that point in time. Were you left with the impression that she was on her way then, or that you had to find another parent?
I was left with the impression that she was going to try and contact dad, to have dad come. And then approximately 10 minutes later, she called again saying that she was unable to get a hold of dad, and that she would be on her way.
Okay. She being Jennifer Crumbley.
Yes, that is correct.
All right. And you said you forwarded this Exhibit 74 to Jennifer Crumbley.
This was forwarded in the email.
Okay. And then this Exhibit 123 was also forwarded to her.
That was texted to her cell phone.
Texted Jennifer Crumbley.
We'll talk about that also, because I don't think that's a smart call by the defense. I think that's a poor call by the
Good or bad
defense.
time to break?
This would be fine.
Yeah, their lunch is here. So, Mr. Hopkins, you can't discuss your testimony with anyone before you return. Okay, all right, and you can sit down. So come back at 1 o'clock, okay?
Yes, they're having a 1 hour break now. Before I go, I am gonna break for lunch.
All rise for the jury.
They're coming back at 1 o'clock. I'm gonna make a new stream for 1 o'clock. But first, I'll have a few thoughts I want to share with you. Number one is that I'm going to explain to you what I think the defense should do on cross-examining, because this is a very, very pivotal witness. This witness is very, very pivotal, and there are approaches that this defense counsel should take, and some of which I expect that she will, and some I expect that she probably will miss, because she seems a little bit green as to like understanding how to come after a witness. But I just want to say this. Someone commented, Dirty Eric commented, student, not Ethan, says a lot. And Amiyano List says it was asked by the defense, they call him shooter, not mention his name. Personally, I think that is a mistake. Assuming that is true, I'm gonna assume you're correct, Amiyana. I think that it is to the prosecution's advantage to keep Ethan as nameless and faceless as possible, even though everyone in the jury certainly knows who he is. The reason I think it's a mistake is because you want to try, if you're the defense counsel, to make this distinction between and sort of make Ethan as real as possible so that he becomes an independent figure from Jennifer. So I think psychologically that probably is more effective if you're using Ethan's name all the time. And you're saying this was Ethan's actions, these were Ethan's decisions, these were Ethan's motives, Ethan's personal psychosis, Ethan acting as an independent of Jennifer beyond anything that's foreseeable. And I think that would help sever the tie and that causal link to reestablish that there's no way she could have known that this was going to happen, and holding her accountable for it is wrong. And anything you can do to plant that seed in the mind of the jury is beneficial. So I think when you just make it a nameless, faceless, there was just a shooter, there was a student, whatever it is, and not humanizing Ethan to the jury, making it some nameless. So in that case, it's just a random shooter as opposed to, no, how am I supposed to know what Ethan's going to do? And think of it like this, when they constantly refer to him as a shooter, it's almost as if before the fact, everyone's thinking him as the shooter, which is just not true. But that's how it just sort of gets planted in the seed. Oh my gosh, why would you treat a shooter that way? He's a shooter. Why would you not warn the school about this shooter? Why? There's so many reasons that I think that if this was the defense counsel, this is a tragic mistake by defense counsel to try and keep Ethan out. And it could be that the mother that's a maternal instinct to say, I don't want to hear my kid's name thrown out there because it's painful to me. But if I was her counsel, I would be pushing her very hard to have Ethan's name used as much as possible, and tell her this is your life on the line. He's already been convicted and was sentenced to spending the rest of his life in jail. We need the jury to recognize that it's his actions, not yours. And that's best served if we're constantly using his name rather than just referring to him as the shooter. Because otherwise you just start thinking, well, why didn't you stop the shooter? You had so many opportunities to prevent the shooter from doing the shooting. I just think it's a terrible choice. It's a terrible call. The other thing I wanted to mention is this. I want to talk to you about if I was defense counsel, how I would approach this. And first and foremost, you definitely want to play into all the mistakes that this counselor made in failing to identify the potential harm. Because this witness, you can turn this witness into basically winning the case for you. The whole situation here, the reason this is such an unusual case, the reason that this case never should have been brought, according to many people, myself, that's my personal opinion as well. The reason is because you're taking this intervening factor of a kid making decisions on his own that are to act in terrible ways that they had never acted before, and saying this is something that was foreseeable, that the parents should have recognized that this is going to happen. And therefore, since they failed to apprise everyone, of this foreseeability, they should be held accountable. So with that being the case, you need to basically pound on this counselor. You saw the pictures, you saw the drawings, you saw the whole history there, the back and forth. And you interpreted this. You're a professional, right? I mean, you went through your whole background, your experience. You're in your professional opinion, he was a harm to himself. That's why he was left in the school. That's why you didn't demand that he go home. If you thought he was a threat to others, you certainly would have said go home. I'm definitely not risking other students' lives. And and you can use this witness to basically say this is why the case doesn't belong here. Because even the school counselor, the one who's licensed, professional, experienced, trained, understands how to interpret these things, he didn't see this as foreseeable until after the fact. But we're judging Jennifer based on what she did before the fact. Why are we not judging this counselor? And as that questioning goes on and pressing him into admitting that he had no idea, and he'll probably try and slither out by saying like, well, I didn't know he had a gun. You didn't ask about a gun. Once he starts using that, you say, he's drawing a detailed picture of a Sig Sauer. And he's looking up bullets. Did it not cross your mind to ask him whether or not he had access to a gun, to ask the parents whether or not he had access to a gun? Why didn't you ask that? Why didn't you search his bags? Maybe he took a gun. Maybe his parents never gave him access to a gun and he got one from a friend of his. Why didn't you ask these questions? Why didn't you go through his bag, through his locker? Make sure that, hey, this kid who seems like a potential threat, it's very foreseeable that he's a threat to society. It's so foreseeable that we're going to charge the parents for not stepping up and recognizing that foreseeability and doing something to prevent it. That if it's so foreseeable, why didn't you go through his book bag? Why didn't you go through his locker? Why don't you ask the parents if he has access to a gun to their knowledge? But you didn't do any of that. And I would keep pressing on this. Once you established his admission that this was not foreseeable, and if it's not foreseeable, Jennifer cannot be held liable, that it's not foreseeable, I would be pushing him harder and harder that this is his fault. That by the time I'm done with it, this bottom would be crying. He would be crying and out of like feeling guilt for the fact that these kids are dead because of him, not because of Jennifer, because he was the one who was experienced. He's the one who had the training. He's the one who had the background. He's the one who had the knowledge. He's the one who saw these pictures. He's the one who had knowledge of the fact that he'd been looking up bullets a day earlier. He's the one who was negligent in failing to inquire about his access to a gun. And he's the one who didn't demand, where he had the authority to do so, didn't demand that this kid be sent home. These are parents who are not trained in understanding a potential threat, but he is, and he didn't send them home. And these kids are dead because of you. Because when he's defending that, and I'm telling you now, this guy looks like he would start crying there on the stand. And the reason I would do this is to basically say when he's done when he is finished bawling, I would say, you're right. It's not your fault, because even though you're more trained than my client, even though you're more experienced than my client, this was not predictable. I would have them cry and then be reassuring at the end of my cross-examination. I don't think it's your fault, because this was not predictable. And get them to agree with you ultimately that this was not predictable, almost for their own self-exoneration, so that they don't feel the guilt. They don't feel like it was their fault. And if it's not this counselor's fault, even though they're trained, it's certainly not Jennifer Crumbley's fault. That's how I would play this cross-examination. But if you have a different way of how you would play this cross-examination, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So drop a comment down below. Let me know. And I will... I'm certainly interested to hear your thoughts as if you think that there's a flaw in the way I'm approaching it, if you think that's too aggressive. I'm telling you now, that's my gut as to how I would approach this cross-examination. If he had gone in the bathroom and harmed himself, would anyone be charged with manslaughter? Probably not. I don't know. And you're right. It's a very fair question. And if anything, that's more foreseeable. But almost certainly not. That's why I'm saying that this whole thing comes across like it's mob justice. And it's mob justice based on the fact that we're angry about the fact that this school shooting happened and we want to punish someone and punish as many someones as possible. And punishing this kid doesn't feel like it's enough. And that's how we end up getting poor justice, injustice. Those are my thoughts on this. I'm going to take a break for lunch as the court is. I will be creating a new afternoon trial for this. Tonight, I plan on going through the Alex Murdaugh hearing. We'll be doing that this evening. I'm probably going to start my show early tonight because I think it's probably a lot. There's a lot that's going on there. Golly, I'm going to be working my life out. I'm going to spend my whole life doing nothing but streaming. But tonight, I'm going to be covering Alex Murdaugh. And I think that's going to be really interesting. You're going to really appreciate that. So make sure you check that out. I'm wrapping up here. I'm going to set up an afternoon stream where we'll be watching the afternoon session of trial. That's going to start at 1 o'clock. I will see you all then. I thank you all for joining me. If you have any thoughts or questions or comments, I would really appreciate you dropping them in the comments below. I usually check them out and I try to respond where relevant. That's what I got for you now. I'll see you all at 1 o'clock. Till then, take care of yourselves. And as always, Godspeed.